How the fuck's it going out there, everybody? This is DJ Daddy Love coming out to you with a special PSA on this scorching hot summer day. Some people can't handle the streets. Some people need to retreat, my friends. Retreat! Live up on mountains with spotty internet. So for the first 40 minutes or so, the conversation is a little technologically challenged. But stick with it, folks. It's a good one. It's a fucking long one. Alright, now here we go, everybody. See you out there in the stew by. Hey, how's it going, universe? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I am joined again by past and future guest Dan Profitt. Today, he's going to be helping me talk about the 1989 film, Do the Right Thing.
Ooh-wee. It's going to be a scorcher today.
Universal Pictures presents a new film from Spike Lee.
Good morning, Miss Mother Sister.
Now, Mookie, don't work too hard today. The man says it's gonna be hot as the devil.
I've been here 25 years. LaSalle's famous pizzeria is here to stay.
Trust me.
Mookie, the last time I trusted you, we ended up with a son.
I know you can't stand it. You can't stand it.
Hey, Sal, I'm gonna bring from the wall here.
You want brothers on the wall?
Love.
Get your own place. You can do what you want to do.
The film is directed by Spike Lee, written by Spike Lee. It stars Danny Leo, Ossie Davis, Ruby Dee, Richard Edson, Giancarlo Esposito, Spike Lee, Bill Nunn, John Turturro, Paul Benjamin, Frankie Faison, Robin Harris, Joy Lee, Miguel Sandoval, Rick Aleo, John Savage, and others. The logline plot synopsis is, on the hottest day of the year on a street in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn, everyone's hate and bigotry smolders and builds until it explodes into violence.
Doctor,
Come on, what?
always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
Yeah, that's all nice and everything, Sean. But before we get started here, I had kind of a grievance that I wanted to share with you, especially since you got your nice studio all redone by your wife and everything. You know, as far as I know, there's a lot of Scottish, Irish Americans that watch Zoobox. You know, me and Paul giving a lot of Ninja Guineas, a lot of lemons and ice cream. I had much money on Zoobox, and I don't see no Irish or Scottish Americans up on your wall. I don't see Andrew Carnegie or nobody about that. When are we going to get that?
Well, let me tell you something, okay? When you start a YouTube channel, and you start your own YouTube channel, and you have your own studio, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Okay? But until then, it's nothing but Zoobox, Funko Pops, and Batman. Okay? That's my culture. That's my culture. That's where I'm coming from. Obviously, the great Danny Leo, everybody.
Yeah, man. I mean, just as you usually say, a murderer's row. I'm talking about a murderer's row. Every single actor in this movie bringing it thoroughly into their character. It really comes through when you're watching the behind-the-scenes stuff and you see them out of character. They're all so different than their characters. The way they made Spike Lee look like he was 15 years old, dude. Like, it was incredible. The combination of like makeup and costuming and gait and everything. I thought to myself, was Spike Lee really that young when he directed this? And then you go watch the behind the scenes stuff and he just looks like Spike Lee. Then you watch the movie and it's like, wow, this is a 15-year-old kid. It's so convincing. Everybody's so into their role.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's like shaving that goatee off, like that signature Spike early 90s goatee, and giving him the haircut really kind of transforms him, because he was 32 years old when he made this.
Yeah. And they get, all his clothes are a little over large, and he walks in like he's kind of doing an impression of you remember like Paul Rudd in Wet Hot American Summer when he's got to put his lunch away? Yeah, like he sells a very convincing teenager, and I was like, is this one of those black don't crack things? Or is it, no, it was just great costuming, great makeup, great, I think the haircut had a lot to do with it too, because like the only people who would get a haircut like that were like, I don't want to say it was black kids in the late 80s, early 90s, because I remember distinctly my brother getting like a zigzag, like, design over here, like a Vanilla Ice, like zigzag with a couple of lines. But that kind of like late 80s haircut, like the only kid that's going to get that is like a 16-year-old in 1989 because it looks so stupid, you know what I mean? And like dude, the fashion, it's ridiculous. The neons, the colors, the fashion on the young people in particular is so of the era. You get to like peek back at what that late 80s, early 90s vibe was, and it was just gaudy in a very particular way, especially in the hood, you know what I mean, where it was like cross colors and an Africa pendant and Black Lives Matter, so it was the one that Bugging Out wears, just black power, straight up black power.
Yeah.
You know, there's a scene where like there's 3 different characters all wearing like a leather Africa pendant. I remember that shit, dude. I remember that shit. Listen, some of the more Caucasian listeners of Zoobox might not know, but I saw that like back in the late 80s, early 90s, just like dudes walking around the hood. None of these dudes knew. Like, you couldn't, if you had said to them like, "What is a country? Where is like Zambia?" They would have been like, shit, man. But they all had like were wearing Africa pendants and shit. And it was part of like a fashion statement of the time more than actually expressing any sort of like true cultural heritage. But it was like really blocking at that time. There was a brand called Cross Colors.
Ethnic oriented clothing. That's the image we want to portray. But everything from our advertising, from our posters, from everything. We used black models, and we even told people from the beginning that we were designing a line for ethnically oriented people, you know, for our people. So, which was scary for us, in a sense, because everyone in the industry, a lot of people had been doing clothes which were geared towards that market, but they would never say it right out or have it written down. They were producing clothes for that market, but we boldly said that we were, and we were a black-owned company, and we wanted to do that.
That used to be really big in the hood. It was all those gaudy, bright colors, and you know, kind of like you were wearing a dashiki, but it was stylized to be American. You know? Yeah. It was just part of the style of hip hop at the time.
Well, I think that's because
dude, there's a. Sorry.
Oh, you're okay. No, I was just gonna say I think that's because there was at that time in particular, there was now enough distance from like the actual Black Power movements of the 60s and 70s and some of the civil rights leaders that stuff was probably more mainstreamed, right? It was in school. It would have been the time of kind of retrospectives and probably documentaries and kids learning about it in school, and they're kind of trying to embrace that in a more, you know, and sold to them. Actually, just they commodified it, basically, honestly. Technical difficulties. Now we're back.
We were talking about, I had just lost it when I was talking about how Henry Rollins turned Gil Scott-Heron off his head in the 90s and said that the revolution will be brought to you by Pepsi. And then you actually see, like, you know, a Kylie Jenner commercial where she brings a protester a fucking can of soda pop. the cop shoots a non-lethal object into their head and makes them brain dead for the rest of their life. So, we're seeing this really strange perversion of the ideas that were brought forth in the 60s, where it was like, we're going to fight the man, but now it's like you're fighting the man for the man. And, the era of do the right thing was like the beginning of that commodification, where you had a black power pendant sold to a kid who was almost wholesale forgotten what a couple of generations ago were fighting for. In fact, one of the most, I would say, moving scenes in the movie that I had forgotten about when I watched it when I was younger, because it didn't make sense to me when I was younger, but now that I'm older, it hit me really hard, was when that group of teenagers is making fun of the mayor to his face and talking shit to him.
I ain't going out like that, man. You walk up and down this block like you own it.
For real? Yes, I know.
You so old, you like a fossil. Oh, man, you a bum, man. You're an old drunk zero, man. Now what do you got to say for yourself?
What you know about me? Can't even pee straight. Nary a one of you. What you know about anything? Unless you done stood in the door, listen to your 5 hungry children crying for bread. And you can't do a damn thing about it. Your woman standing there, you can't even look her in the eye. Unless you done that, you don't know me, my pain, my hurt, my feelings. You don't know shit.
No, man. No, let him finish. Let the old man finish.
Don't call me bum. Don't call me a drunk. You all ain't got the sense of God to give a belly go. Don't call me nothing. It's disrespectful. I know your mamas and your papas raised you better.
Yo, man, I hope you finish your little soliloquy, man.
And, the young kid is like, yeah, I wouldn't, if I had 5 kids, I wouldn't let them be starving. I'd go out and get a job. I wouldn't be sitting on my broke ass and blah, blah, blah. Completely misunderstanding the fact that, when the mayor was his age, there was segregation. Couldn't go get a good job, what I mean, that paid well. And, it was almost like Spike saying that the younger black community had lost connection with the true ideas or maybe not connection with the ideas, but connection with the reality of what it was like before, where you couldn't even step on the same sidewalk as a white person. And you're going to now make fun of this dude because he is, clearly traumatized and drunk. He spends his days getting drunk because he's got no family anymore. And you're going to tell him that you would have done better. All while you're wearing this black power pendant, Africa pendant. And it's like, dude, you're so disconnected from what it's like. Now we have that projected out 30 years later, where you have a black girl going to Harvard to get a degree to become the next Supreme Court justice, telling a white coal miner in Appalachia that he's got privilege. And, the pendulum has swung so far to the other side. But in Do the Right Thing, it's right in the middle. Yeah. It's still the 80s, it's still the 90s, it's still when America was still so opulent and in our protective, pre-September 11th bubble, where, really the biggest worry that most Americans had in the late 80s and the early 90s, and actually all the way through into the early 2000s, was episode of The Simpsons going to be good?
Yeah.
And all the issues that they have to deal with on top of, what white people have to deal with. And, when you live in this strange world where you can go out and buy a Black Power Africa pendant, but there's no true organized movement anymore. Everybody's just kind of hanging out. It's just the way that everybody was experiencing the late 80s, early 90s was this really strange kind of early experience where we were kind of out of time, out of history, and just, waiting for the next song, the next episode of whatever. What's the next dance going to be? There's a cut scene where the kids are on top of one of the buildings, trying to dance because they have nothing better to do. And it almost seems like in the 80s and the 90s, Americans were just kind of sitting around trying to figure out what to do with all our money. And then something like what happens in this movie comes along, totally shakes a neighborhood up. And
Yeah, like I mean,
totally
like
different. But by and large, everybody's just
well, I would say like the is in terms of like film, the movie that culminates this kind of period, I think, of American life is probably American Beauty. Like American Beauty, that's a movie that could not come out post 9/11. Like it's a because of the subject matter. Have you ever seen American Beauty?
yes, and I think that I totally feel that because it almost captures that particular melancholy of being in a totally safe part of the world and safe part of history and not knowing what to do with yourself. Yeah, you're right. That probably captures that zeitgeist perfectly.
Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, this is a sentiment though that Spike Lee sympathizes with. I mean, this is what he talks about. If you go watch interviews, like he had an interview with Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose asking him, you know, what do you think like Malcolm X would think of the current state of the black community and the black experience? And his answer was, he thought he'd be horrified.
Number one, the rate that young black males are killing each other. That would kill himself. The rate that these young black women are having kids, you know, he'd be turned over in his grave. How we're not valuing education. I mean, those are the things I think Malcolm stressed. That's what we really want young black America to get out of this film. How much importance Malcolm put in education.
This is, you know, and this is one of the things I do actually appreciate about Spike Lee in this era, especially as a filmmaker, that he was actually trying to send a positive message to kind of like people in the situations that they find themselves in, like do the right thing, trying to like actually have that intellectual conversation about like, oh, you have to help yourself, like you have to try to get yourself out of this thing. Don't have like fucking kids out of wedlock. Take care of your family. Like start a business. Be self-sufficient. You know.
Yeah, and you know, because a great filmmaker and a great thing, Spike Lee doesn't preach too much on either side. He presents all the sides of the issue, all the different questions, and none of the answers really. And that's why lesser thinkers get caught up in these kind of thoughts like, oh, did Mookie do the right thing or not? And it's like, well, the answer, like, the right thing to do is so nebulous, and it is so dependent on your time and your place and who you are and who's around you and the circumstances, that there is, you know, I think the thesis of the movie is that there is no right thing. Like, do the right thing, that's so subjective. That's so particular to your present moment. What is the right thing? And that's why people get caught up on whether did Mookie do the right thing? And it's like,
well, I think
is anybody doing the right thing at any particular moment?
I think one of the themes of the movie is short-sightedness. It's this idea that like not enough of people have like a kind of long-term view of their own life, and they just are reactionaries in a certain respect. And that's kind of the conversations that happen, like the three guys, like Freddie Faison and with Robin Hardy, or Frankie Faison rather, Robin Harris. Sorry, that's what they're kind of talking about. Those three dudes that are like sitting out in the lawn chairs and just like looking at the neighborhood. That comes up there. It comes up again with that moment in the film with Ossie Davis that you brought up before. Nobody has kind of a long-term view of their life and what their responsibilities are or how to build towards something. I think if there's a theme in the movie, like you said, it touches on a lot of different aspects and it tries to fairly represent like the life of living in a neighborhood like that for all different walks of life and how they're all affected. But I do think if there is a theme in the movie, that's kind of what I took away from it.
Well, there's so many themes in the movie. I actually made a graph on my notes of 8 different themes that I think that the movie talks about, and one of them is time. In fact, the time box is the one that's most full. For a movie that takes place in a very tight 24 hours, it actually speaks a lot to the concept of time, and it does that through the characters that are older and the characters that are younger and how they interact. And you know, like through the mayor and mother, sister, and some of the characters, you get a peek into the black experience from the before time when things were truly threatening
for black people. And these younger black kids are in this new time where it's like, yes, things are still threatening for black people, but you know, like at the end of the movie, everybody's pissed off about how Radio Raheem was choking Sal to death. Radio Raheem was like potentially trying to kill Sal. Okay? So when the police had him in custody seconds later, it's always one of these things. It's just like so many of these different videos that you're seeing these days. And listen, Spike Lee, man, he's a fucking genius. This movie is even more relevant 32 years later than it was in 1989. Because Radio Raheem happens every fucking 6 weeks in America, or less. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like in the Radio Raheem case, there are circumstances that lead up to it. It's like, look, this motherfucker was trying to kill somebody. What were the police supposed to do?
And I think that people are so busy asking the question of whether or not Mookie did the right thing starting the riot. Listen, the police aren't there to be executioners. But when you have a dude as big as Radio Raheem and he's pissed off and he's throwing punches and shit, you got to get that dude under control. Police officers are basically trained to kill people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's this terrible cross-section of events where it's like, police are trained to take motherfuckers down and ask questions. Like, been out in the wild out on a fucking basis. If you think that's a racist assumption, dude, I grew up fucking seeing it. It's just part of hood culture. To not cooperate with police, to fight against the police, to run away from the police. And it creates this fucking cycle where people get shot, people get killed, people shoot at the cops shoot at them. And the black community has been at war with police officers for so many generations now, it's fucking baked into the cake. So what do you even do about it? And, you know, in the situation of Radio Raheem, it's like so many things happen in that sequence. So many bad choices are made leading up to the point where that dude gets choked out. You can place the blame on almost everybody in that scenario. Most responsible, you have to hold the cop that actually killed the dude. He did not have to kill that dude. But Radio Raheem was trying to kill another dude. Shit happens in adrenaline-fueled situations, man. This is part of being human. This is why until robots start to be our fascist dictators, and God hope that comes any day, that we're going to be running into these human situations where it's like our animalistic tendencies take over and shit. And, you know, Radio Raheem happens every fucking couple of weeks now. You know what I mean? What are we going to do about this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Radio Raheem character is an interesting figure in the movie because he comes in interspersed throughout the film. He's very aggressive. He's angry. He's supposed to capture, I guess, the spirit of the young, angry black guy. And he provokes people constantly. He's not a nice man. He's not a nice kid. You know, he's harassing the Korean.
He's the young, angry black kid on the T who, like, when I was on the T, he had his cell phone out and was just like listening to a cell phone on speaker mode. And now he probably has like a Bluetooth and he's like fucking annoying everybody on the subway car with his Bluetooth. But Bill Nunn was talking about you know, the inspiration for Radio Raheem, and he's like, look, dude, I'm not too deep with it.
I felt sorry for the kid. Just the sympathy I evoked within myself for the character helped me to be the character. It wasn't like a deep process. I mean, I'm not deep. I'm not one of them kind of Johnny Carson cats that get on Johnny and say, well, when I was preparing for Raheem, you know, I went and lived with gang members and, you know, had them whoop my ass a couple times so I could really see how it felt, you know. No, I don't have to get my ass kicked to play like I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a dude who, he's big, he doesn't talk too much, and he wants, you know, he feels like this music speaks for him, and he doesn't have to say anything else. So he walks around with it on blast, and he wants everybody to hear that message, and it speaks for itself. And dude, living in the city, there was a fucking 1,000 black kids with like their cell phones out, listening to rap and rapping along with it on the T. Everybody just kind of politely not fucking saying anything about it. But it's like, you know, I guess when you are a person who feels like you don't even have a voice at all, you know, you feel entitled to opening up that music box and playing it as loud as you can. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it pisses other people off.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, I think in like there's a subtext there about Spike Lee's probably thoughts about like the importance of kind of black art and how it can be kind of a tool for the downtrodden, giving them a voice, as he said. And I think, Spike Lee would think of his films in that respect as well. I mean,
yeah, this movie opens up with what people call the Black National Anthem, which is lift up every voice and sing. Starts off with a sort of, like a clarinet rendition of it that immediately cuts to the Public Enemy track in like a very hard cut where Rosie Perez starts doing that classic 1980s hip-hop dance. But yeah, like the black voice through music. He's trying to explore that through the Radio Raheem character, where this character feels like the only voice that he really has in the world is his loud boombox, because, nobody really understands this dude. He's a little too aggressive for everybody, He's a little too intimidating.
Well, I think that's also just the teenage experience as well. Like, because these characters, most of them are supposed to be younger people. I think everybody kind of gravitates towards that when they're that age. Like, you don't know how to articulate yourself, you don't know how to express yourself, but you know how you feel. And I think oftentimes we go to movies or music to use as examples, as like kind of a shorthand, like a heuristic,
Yeah, much the same way that like when I was like a punky teenager in my mid to late teens, I'd write like Misfits lyrics on my jeans or whatever, like font, or like on my shirt I'd put like a patch with like a band that had like some funny saying that just stupid shit that teenagers really they like you said, like they know how they feel, but they don't know how to express it, so they have pieces of art that express it for them. And, obviously in the hood on an extremely hot and humid day, where you have people who are feeling a little more aggression because of how hot it is. You know how it is on a hot day. It's like you can't escape. You can't escape the feeling of oppression on a hot day. It's everywhere. It's like there's a wet blanket on your face. And actually, the guy who plays Bugging Out, I can't pronounce his name. He's a great actor.
Giancarlo Esposito.
The guy who plays Bugging Out, also Gus Fring. Yes. His behind the scenes shit is so great. He's a thorough method actor.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
Completely unlike Bugging Out, and he's exploring this new personality that he gets to be on screen. And he was talking about the motivations for the character and stuff, getting real into it as Bill. He talks about how one of the reasons why Bugging Out gets so pissed off that he starts to protest. It's almost like this, the want of a nail, we lost the kingdom thing, where because he doesn't want to get cooled off, he's extra temperamental. So he's so pissed off because he didn't jump in front of the hydrant because he didn't want to get his shoes wet that he goes into Sal's already pissed off, and he starts shit with Sal because of that. And this is like this thread where the temperature leads to these ridiculous scenarios where people get increasingly agitated with each other. And if you notice, and this is a great theory, dude. This guy's actually he's got it pegged. The people who start the protest are Bugging Out, who doesn't go into the fire hydrant, Radio Raheem, who makes them turn the fire hydrant off.
And Smiley, who gets forcibly shoved into the fire hydrant. Smiley being the avatar of the well-meaning white liberal who's trying to get into the cause. So the only people who get into the protest against Sal's are the people who rejected the baptizing blessing of the cooling fire hydrant. And I think it is the little theory that one of the actors came up with, but it actually sticks. You know what I mean? Bugging Out started the protest because he didn't want to get his sneakers wet. It's like there's one thing that leads to like a butterfly effect. At the end of the movie, when they're panning across all the wreckage from Sal's being burned down, one of Bugging Out's sneakers is in the wreckage.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Well, because it's a part of what the inspiration for the script was, which was originally titled Heatwave when he first wrote it, is an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
When I was little, I saw this show. I don't know if it was One Step Beyond, Alfred Hitchcock, A Twilight Zone. It was about the scientists that had discovered that after 95 degrees, the murder rate goes up. And you see him throughout the whole half an hour of the show, looking at a thermometer as it inches up. Then he got murdered at the end. I must have been like 6 years old. That's all I remember about the show. But I do remember it was the hottest day of the summer. And then most of the volatile, riots and stuff like that have always happened, for the most part, in the summer.
That was, so it kind of informs that, the part of that, I suppose.
And every corner of the film, just oh man, the director of photography, I forget his name. He was in a lot of the behind the scenes footage, but everything looks like it's hot. All the characters are sweating. All the colors that they choose are made to look like everything's just popping with warmth. They have, lens effects on the camera where it looks like that heat effect coming up off the road. There's a shot where it's just like I call them the Greek chorus. Sweet Dick Willie, ML, and what's his face, Coconut.
Yeah.
They are the typical Greek chorus sitting on the side of the stage, commenting on everything, talking shit about all the characters that are actually participating in the action of the story. But there's a shot of them sitting against the wall, and it's just hot. It looks like they're sitting in a fucking oven. And when you watch this movie, the expression of how hot that particular day is communicated so well that it's almost uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, it's the director of photography. His name is Ernest Dickinson, and a lot of the ways that they did that, they did a lot of cool stuff. Like he was very instrumental. Actually, he's probably the most important piece of the movie, of from the for the technical craft.
One of the things that I tried to use to emphasize heat was color. That's why the film has such a warm look. I was limiting the color balance more towards the oranges and the yellows, staying away from a lot of blues and greens in the film. And basically this came from having studied a little bit of color psychology in submarines. In order to keep people cooler and calmer, a lot of submarine interiors are painted in blues and greens, which are cooler colors, which have a tendency to slow the heart rate down and are more calming. They try to stay away from reds, yellows, because red has a tendency, it's very subtle, but it does have a tendency to raise the heart rate.
It was he designed that they recolored all the buildings to to provoke in your mind the idea of things being hot, but also, like you said, the weird kind of heat effects they used for the camera. Super simple stuff. They had a sterno candle and lighters underneath the lens.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of actually, and they, where they learned that from? They learned that from Martin Scorsese in the film Raging Bull. He did a very similar thing where they have Jake LaMotta in one of his intense fights, and he had a fire a fire bar like underneath the lens just to kind of distort all the images. And that's those guys, like, you know, they're real students of cinema, like they're real students of film, and they were taking stuff from everywhere. Everything movie they had ever watched, like they incorporated somehow in here. Even the way they use the Dutch angles, like that's why like there's so much like crooked angling in the movie.
Right. Spike and I, being students of film, one of the films we did look at was The Third Man. The expressionistic photography of that film, I think, has inspired so many cinematographers. But we decided to employ Dutch angles to increase the tension, because that was the thing about Heat being a character, but also the thing that Spike brought out was the fact that on the hottest days of the summer, the murder rate rises. People's nerves are on edge. You know, the heat just grates on people's nerves, and things are likely to explode. So this is supposed to be the hottest day of the summer, and using canted angles like that was a way of really emphasizing the tensions that were brewing underneath the surface.
Yeah.
It's just to show how off kilter everything is, you know?
Yes. Almost like everybody's head is turned to the side out of like exhaustion and annoyance. And one of the things that was pointed out, and one of the first times I actually sat and watched this movie to watch it was in a film class at high school that dealt with American history. And one of the things that the teacher pointed out to me that made me fall in love with the look of the movie was anytime you're sitting in Sal's and you have a shot kind of looking at the Wall of Fame, you can see the word sausage being projected on the wall in shadows, because the word sausage is on the window of the pizza shop. So when they're sitting there, you can actually see that shadow coming in. And he pointed out to us, you know, think about how hard it is to, on a movie set with natural sunlight, make that actually cascade perfectly in shadow across the wall so it sits right in the corner on top of that character. And it's the kind of thing where when you're casually viewing the movie, you don't even notice it, but then when you stop to look at it, you're like, wait a second, they probably took at least an hour to set that up and make it all right. And the director of photography, the set designer, all worked together to make sure that that shadow would cascade on that wall at that particular spot, so that when the camera sits there and those characters are sitting in the frame, it's painted there like a painting. And that kind of shit is what started to make me think deeper about movies. Like specifically the word sausage on the wall of the Wall of Fame made me start to think more deeply about the way films are made and what directors are doing. They're almost, a good director is almost painting a picture in front of you that moves, the way they frame stuff.
Oh, 100%. And it's all about subliminal messaging. It's all about like putting that's the great thing about cinema. It's about show, don't tell. Like they're sending you so many kind of subconscious messages through the way something like that is designed, right? They want you to feel something without you knowing why you feel that way.
Yeah, and so much of that, you know, I know that this movie has so much to say about race and the hood and black people and white people and our future together in America. But Jesus Christ, can we give a little credit just to the way this movie looks and feels and dances around in your brain, how the characters are just people that you want to be around and learn from. Like, you want to be hanging out in that neighborhood on that corner in this place with these people. You want to go into Sal's and get a slice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a tangible reality. Like the verisimilitude is perfect. Like it's nothing takes you out of the movie.
Yeah,
and like the craftsmanship, it is the craftsmanship. It is like I would say usually we pick like a secret MVP of the movie. It's definitely Ernie Dickinson. It's definitely the DP.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you had said that Sweet Dick Willie might have been, but Sweet Dick Willie is the obvious MVP of the movie. Everybody knows Sweet Dick Willie. Everybody knows Sweet Dick Willie. But we do want to know what kind of a mother names her son Sweet Dick.
What? Come on, little funny baby.
Oh, what, sucker?
You know what I'm talking about.
That's okay. At least my moms didn't name me Sweet Dick Willie.
I told you about that mama shit.
Hey, nobody talking about your mom.
I ain't say nobody, motherfucker. I said you.
But yeah, dude, I mean, the way the movie looks, it's so inviting. Like when I put that movie on, from the moment that Rosie Perez starts dancing, and yes, there's a very nostalgic feel for me because I did grow up in a neighborhood with a lot of black people, a lot of Puerto Rican people. Dude, Rosie Perez's character in this movie is the most fucking accurate depiction of a Puerto Rican lady on film ever done. And because it was literally just Rosie Perez getting to be herself. Like she didn't have to act. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Perez is a Puerto Rican girl from Brooklyn. So all she had to do was get on set and be herself. And she actually had problems with it because, you know, like all these other kids were like Morehouse kids and art school kids and acting school kids. And Rosie Perez was like a background dancer on fucking Soul Train and shit. And she was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Why are you like calling me Tina after they call cut?" Like all the other characters were staying in character after they call cut, and Rosie Perez is like, "Yo, my name is Rosie. What the fuck are you doing calling me Tina?" Like, you know, like they couldn't. And the one of the producers was like trying to get to her, you know, and say, like, you know, the motivation for your character. She's trying to get through to Mookie. She's trying to change him a little bit. She's trying to like bring him up a little bit. And Rosie Perez is like, no, she knows that Mookie's a fucking loser. Okay, she knows that Mookie doesn't have a fucking life. There's 27 different guys that one of these guys on the hood in every corner. She's like talking from like a true life experience, and these Hollywood producers are trying to tell her the fucking inspiration behind her character.
Okay? Don't tell me what I need, because what you need is a life, okay?
She could get up and leave him. She is not tied to him. She bitches and complains every 5 minutes, but she lets him in the door. You know? I mean, I think a lot of teenagers, a lot of girlfriends I know are going to look at themselves through this character.
You're going to go out of here and you're not going to be back.
I said I'll be back.
Later for you, okay, Mookie? Later.
It's sad that we have young black men who are out there making babies and really don't care about being a father to their children.
Okay? You need to get a life, because the life you have, Mookie, is tired, okay? I'm tired of it.
Dude, Rosie Perez, second in line for secret MVP of this movie. She's so fucking great, man.
Well, yeah, she's so authentic. She is so, like you just said, like she's so authentic. She feels so real. Those arguments feel real, and you can't help but kind of feel for her character in a way.
Yeah,
because Mookie is an asshole. Mookie's a piece of shit.
Deadbeat. Everything that Rosie Perez says about Mookie is true. He needs to get a fucking life, Mookie. Because you know what? He goes over, he's talking, he's yelling at her mom because her mom is speaking Spanish in front of his kid.
Se la pasa por la calle, ni siquiera se preocupa por
English,
mi hija, ni siquiera
English.
se preocupa
I want
por
my
este
son
nene.
to speak
Why don't you
English,
just
all right?
Get out of my kitchen.
It's bad enough his name is Hector.
Get out of my kitchen. I don't want to hear anything. Get out.
And he doesn't want his kid growing up speaking Spanish. He wants him to grow up speaking English. But he hasn't been around in a fucking week.
Well, he doesn't, and he also, I don't think he lives there.
No, he doesn't live there.
No,
he
lives with his family. Yeah,
he and his sister live, at least together with his sister. And, so, Mookie is a fucking deadbeat. And, like, dude, watching him, especially as a business owner, like, watching Mookie as a teenager when I saw this movie when I was younger is one thing. Watching him now, dude, he wastes so much fucking time on the clock. He goes home and takes a fucking shower when he's supposed to be delivering a fucking pizza. Like, he has no sense of responsibility whatsoever. Up until the point where after he burns down his place of employment and Sal asks him what he's going to do, he says, get that money. I'm going to get paid.
I'm going to get paid.
Where are you going to get paid? What are you going to do? You're going to go to the Korean grocery store across the street that you didn't burn down? What the fuck are you going to do, Mookie? And Spike Lee talks about that. Like, Mookie has no fucking, like you said, he has no sense of the future. He represents that young black kid who just wants to get paid, and he has no idea what the path is towards that.
It's incredible how perceptive Spike Lee is, because he's saying things that, like, you're not really allowed to address in modern society. And he was saying it 30 years ago. He was just like, yo, dude, you got to fucking take responsibility. Like, that's kind of like the big, one of the overarching themes of the movie as well. Take some fucking responsibility for yourself.
Well, I think that's probably what do the right thing probably most likely actually means. It doesn't mean that there's a particular right thing to do in any given situation. You're going to swoop in and be the hero. I think it means that every day, like you said, you have to take responsibility for your life, your actions, and yourself. people around you that you're supposed to take care of for. I mean, Mookie should be taking care of his sister. Mookie should be taking care of his family. He's a young man. You know what I mean? He's got a lot of energy. 200 years ago, well, for Mookie, it would have been different 200 years ago. But a white kid 200 years ago, when he was 15, I always say it on this podcast, he would have had 3 kids in a cabin that he built himself already. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like in the post-war era in America, we set a completely different standard for what fucking teenagers should be doing with their time and energy. And Mookie is an example of the absolute worst. And it's not just black kids, because white kids did the same fucking thing. This malaise of like, oh, we have so much. Like I said to you in the chat, and I'll bring it around right now, and you'll finally understand it. Black kids had their expression with the malaise. White kids' expression with the malaise was, I want to kill myself because my dad doesn't want to kill himself. Like my life is so good, and I have so much stuff.
Yeah, no, I got you. I got that immediately when you said that. Like, I knew exactly what you were talking about.
When I moved from Millville, New Jersey, which is in Cumberland County, which right now is the poorest county in New Jersey, has one of the highest violent crime rates, even though it's a very tiny place. When I moved from there to Lillywhite Keene, New Hampshire, I couldn't fucking understand, like, there was this kind of like separation in the understanding of, like, I didn't know. Sorry, it's taking me a while to get my thought together on it because it just drives me so mad. I didn't understand what the white kids were so pissed off about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't know why they wanted to, like, listen to grunge and do heroin and kill their parents. I was like, dude, you have it so fucking good up here. Like, what are you doing? Why are you so pissed off? And that what I realize now is that malaise, that narcissism and that nihilism was built into every cultural output at the time. The hip-hop, the rock and roll, all the pop culture, it was fucking baked in. And it was to get all of us on board with this hyper-consumerism where if you give a fuck about anything, that kind of like gums up the works. You got to not give a fuck about anything except the new shoes coming out.
Well, it's the problem of the disposability of a lot of our cultural artifacts from the kind of the 80s on. Like, you can't sit with something and reflect on it and think about what it means or the value of it. Because it's like, you know, a lot of these things, a lot of the like malaise, apathy, I mean, that's in Shakespeare, right? But that's something that we deconstruct, we think about, we can sit with. But the rapid output of misery, I guess, like self-imposed misery, self-destruction, like the fact that like Kurt Cobain was held up as like some sort of like heroic figure, like, I guess for white people, right? Like, that's kind of it's an odd thing. And I say that I like Nirvana well enough, just as like anybody else, I suppose, but like lionizing him, I always found to be a weird thing. But
Look,
that's the
Kurt
symptom.
Cobain was held up as an example for white kids, and Eazy-E and Snoop Dogg was held up as an example for black kids. And the real question is, who produced all these records? But anyway, we're not going to answer that question on this podcast.
Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
No, I think I agree with you.
Produce them.
Well, it's like the people that are funneling the money in and stuff, because it's like laundering nihilism. They laundered it through culture. You know, when you start getting into gangster rap, like you start getting into these kind of things, or you start getting to the grunge scene and deeper into kind of more, because it's like, you know, you go to the punk era, that's just people being angry, right? That's just angry expression. That's just lashing out. It's a little bit more insidious when it becomes mainstream, when it becomes popularized, because it becomes so like vague and broad and general and unspecific. So people don't even know where to like put how they feel about the things that they're experiencing or listening to, right?
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense. I could be full of shit, but that's just kind of my sense.
No. You have it correct, and that's exactly why at the end of this movie, Mookie throws the fucking trash can into the window, because he just watched his friend get choked out by the fucking cops. Regardless of what Radio Raheem was doing before that moment, That cop is not fucking Judge Dredd. He didn't have the right to kill Radio Raheem.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it in front of the entire fucking neighborhood. And that bubbling anger mixed with that nihilistic feeling that there is no hope for change. In that moment, look, Mookie doesn't make a snap decision. There are several shots before he tosses that trash can where he looks at Sal, like when the crowd asks Sal or says all that stuff to Sal, and then Sal's response is basically, "You gotta do what you gotta do," which was like the worst fucking thing to say in that moment. Mookie, right before he says that, there's a slow motion shot of Mookie looking at him. Mookie looks at the crowd. There's a tracking shot of Mookie walking over to the trash can, taking the lid off, taking the bag out, lifting the trash can up slowly, slowly walking it over to the window, and then right before he throws it into the window, he screams the word hate. And now listen, I never understood that because in all the years that I've watched this movie, I never watched it with the closed captioning on. And I thought that Mookie's just was screaming, hey, H-E-Y. I thought he was screaming at people to get them out of the way so that he could get closer to the window to throw the trash can. He screams the word hate, H-A-T-E, which if you paid attention earlier in the movie, means that Mookie is making the conscious choice to start this riot, to choose hate over love, which Radio Raheem himself warned him about.
Let me tell you the story of right hand, left hand. It's a tale of good and evil. Hate. It was with this hand that Cain iced his brother. Love. These 5 fingers, they go straight to the soul of man. The right hand, the hand of love. The story of life is this. Static. One hand is always fighting the other hand. And the left hand is kicking much ass. I mean, it looks like the right hand love is finished. But hold on, stop the presses, the right hand's coming back. Yeah, he got the left hand on the ropes now, that's right. Yeah, ooh, it's a devastating right, and hate is hurt. He's down. Ooh, left hand hate KO'd by love. If I love you, I love you. But if I hate you,
there it is, love and hate.
And how love can KO hate. But then, after Radio Raheem is murdered in front of everybody, Mookie chooses hate. So, this was a conscious decision on Mookie's part.
It is, but it's a conscious decision, but it's also one, like, I think if you put yourself in the shoes of, like, a young man who's, like you said, just saw their friend die, it's just your primal response. I mean, like, we've all had friends who have been in the wrong and had something bad happen to them, and you take your friend's side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an extension of that, and that's kind of it's something I appreciate about the movie is that it doesn't really moralize, and it doesn't really come down on anyone's particular side. I do think, I'll be honest, I do think the last 20 minutes of the movie, the 15 minutes leading up to the riot, are a little bit messy. I think they're a little bit messy and maybe unintentionally so because it's just like the movie is so nuanced and so subtle up until that point, and then it becomes very direct, which I suppose is understandable because that's your kind of your cone, your top of the pyramid as things start kind of falling into place. But I thought it was like it became a little too easy. It's a little too easy of the movie to make Sal start saying the N-word, which is an interesting thing because Danny Aiello did not want to say it, and he didn't want to say it because he thought his character wouldn't say it.
Right, and I kind of agree with him. I think that Spike Lee was forcing the racism onto Sal. It probably should have been Pino that said it because Pino was the true racist.
Yeah, because he's the overt racist in there, and then in fairness to to Spike, like he gives Pino his time to express himself. Like it's even though Pino is a racist, like you don't misunderstand why he feels the way he does. Like you understand it. Like he explains it to you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you don't misunderstand why any of the characters feel the way they do. There's that incredible scene, which is also echoed in the 25th Hour, which we'll get to in a second, where every different race goes on a fucking hilarious slur-filled tirade about another race.
Dago Wab, Guinea, garlic bread, pizza slinging, spaghetti bending, Victimone, Perry Como, Luciano Pavarotti, solo meal non-singer motherfucker.
You gold teeth, gold chain wearing, fried chicken and biscuit eating, monkey ate baboon, big thigh, fast running, high jumping, spear chucking, 360-degree basketball dunking, titsoon, spade, mullignan. Take your fucking pizza and go the fuck back to Africa.
You little slanty-eyed, me no speaky American, own every fruit and vegetable stand in New York, bullshit Reverend Sun Young Moon, Summer Olympic 88 Korean kickboxing sabaran bitch.
Then the Puerto Rican guy talking about the Chinese people, then the cop talking about the Puerto Rican people, then the Chinese dude talking about, or the Korean guy talking about Jews. And like, he gives every different group a chance to air their grievances. And I think that the smart thing that he did was not answer any of these questions he poses.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I totally agree, because there is no answer.
You're right, there is no answer.
There
There's
is no
right thing to do.
He would have to Hollywoodize it to give an answer, and that's something Spike Lee has said in interviews, that the studio originally wanted Sal and Mookie to hug at the end. And Spike was like, fuck no, dude. No, they're not going to hug.
And in fact, they went so far as to, if you look at some of the deleted scenes, they filmed more of Sal talking at the end where he's like, hey, Mookie, hey, before you go, it's Sal talking to you. Always do the right thing. He like repeats the fucking title of the movie, and it falls so flat and so fake, and the way Spike ended it was so fucking real, and that's why. And like he said, there was an interview with him. We watched several interviews with him over the past couple of weeks. I forget which one it was, where he talks about, somebody brings up Driving Miss Daisy, and he's like, "Look, there's a reason why people don't fucking talk about Driving Miss Daisy anymore." And it's true.
Oh no, it's this movie. Yeah, just
the right thing. But nobody gives a shit about fucking Driving Miss Daisy or any of that pap from the fucking 80s about how we're gonna walk forward together into the future with our fucking hands grasped together.
Well, the reason why he specifically brings up Driving Miss Daisy is because it came out the same year and was nominated for an Academy Award and won the Academy Award. And dude, like, listen. I'm not like a person that gets overly invested, like everything's racist or whatever, but I was like, why the fuck was this not nominated? Like, you look at the other like slew of nominees, like it was Glory, Driving Miss Daisy, and a couple other movies. And actually, Danny Leo is the only person that got nominated for Academy Award, gets beaten by future Spike Lee star Denzel Washington for Glory. And Danny Leo has a really funny anecdote. He's like, it was the tear, Spike. It was that single tear. That's what did it. That's why I lost. I should have won, Spike.
But I mean, dude, it's watching this movie again. So many of these Zoobox Goes to the movies that I watch with adult eyes, with the eyes of a man, where I'm not writing my notes on the back of a matchbook. And I realized that the movie itself isn't that great, and there's a reason why it kind of has fallen out of favor with me through the Tombstone, Total Recall, a couple of the other ones. I realized the warts that these movies actually had. And going back and watching Do the Right Thing, dude, I watched Do the Right Thing 6 times last week, and I kept clips of it on my phone to watch while I was doing work and stuff.
Yeah.
This movie has re-cemented itself in one of my top 5 of all time. And Caitlin had mentioned that I hadn't really talked about this movie very much. And she's right. I think in the last few years, this movie kind of probably is not the kind of movie that I want to see because of the kind of shit that's been happening in my country in the last few years. But then going back and watching it, you can see that Spike Lee kind of saw the trajectory that we were on right now.
Well,
he saw it so many years ago, and now, like I said, we get a Radio Raheem like every fucking few weeks in this country.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like, but that's what was so great about Spike up until when you mentioned the 25th Hour. I think that's probably the last great Spike Lee movie. Like actually like really great because he goes on such a solid run, and it's not so. I don't even know if it's so much prophetic. It's just being honest. Like he's not trying to. I guess like the best way to put it is he's not trying to moralize. He's not trying to. I know Spike Lee has a worldview. I
Right.
know what his worldview is. He talks about it openly. He's not somebody that tries to hide like his power level, like they like to say on the internet, right?
No.
But he's I think that the honesty of that is so refreshing because a lot of times if you were to watch a movie by a less subtle filmmaker, this same movie, it would be awful. It would be moralizing, it would be pandering, it would be like over melodramatic.
Yeah, and he has said in many interviews, like, it's not my job as a filmmaker to answer these questions for you. It's my job to put them in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did a very good job in this movie in particular. I do want to talk about the 25th Hour. He had said in some of these interviews that people sleep on the 25th Hour. And we have. The reason that we are talking about Do the Right Thing right now is because the 25th Hour has been on our list of movies to talk about since you and I did our first episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies.
Mm-hmm.
And he said in this interview that people sleep on the 25th Hour, and we have been sleeping on the 25th Hour.
Although I'm happy though that we did this one first. I think it's like a good primer. I mean, because it feels like not like necessarily a direct companion piece, but it is like this idea of because the 25th Hour is, I guess you could say, it's about like white people, and this is being about more like more about the black experience.
Yeah, I mean, they are two different movies. They're movies that the connectivity between them is that New York, the city of New York, is a character in both of the movies.
But it's also, but you don't think that there's something to like the kind of the cultural juxtapositions?
I mean, I think that the 25th Hour is about different things than Do the Right Thing.
No, it's about wildly different things because Spike Lee was an older man. It's a much older man's story, because it's about how to measure regret and whatnot. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
We do that.
The true connectivity between the two movies is that the 25th Hour has the perfected version of the racist rant scene, where Edward Norton goes through and skewers every different type of person and ethnicity and human being that lives in New York, and it's actually one of the most brilliant rants in any movie. But anyway, that's the 25th Hour. We'll get to that maybe on the next episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. But as I said to you earlier, I had separated all of my notes about this movie into various categories that I thought were themes of the movie. And I'll say, I'll just go through them really quickly. Freedom, property, love, hate, justice, time, identity, and culture. Out of all of those things, there's only one category that doesn't have any notes in it, and that's the category of justice. As I went through the movie, I knew the theme of justice was a theme of the movie, but when I went through, I was looking for actual examples of it, and there aren't any. And I think that one of the themes of the movie is that in the real world, justice is something that's extremely rare. It's not served up very often, and especially in the black community. And, of all these other themes, I think there's so many different throughways, so many different veins that are running through this movie. And one of them is the fact that it's so hard in this world to actually find true justice. And then in a situation like Radio Raheem, there's no way to actually get it. After Radio Raheem is killed, it doesn't matter how many pizza joints you burn down. It doesn't matter how many riots you have. There's no getting Radio Raheem back. There's no fucking justice for Radio Raheem. And I think that is very telling that all of my categories, justice had 0 notes written in it.
Well, and it's also, just dealing with the theme of no justice. It's how the community, that street, deals with the fact. Because the next day, everybody's just kind of outside doing their thing.
Now, the news and weather. Our mayor has commissioned a blue ribbon panel, and I quote, to get to the bottom of last night's disturbance. The city of New York will not let property be destroyed by anyone, end quote. His honor plans to visit our block today. Maybe he should hook up with our own, the mayor, buy him a beer. Your love daddy says, register to vote. The election is coming up. There's no end.
Like, there's a burnt out husk pizzeria, and Sam Jackson's DJ Daddy Love Daddy DJ. He's out there spinning the records again, and the day continues.
You can see that there's a few old people all dressed to the nines walking down the street. They're clearly going to church because it's Sunday morning. The action takes place on a Saturday, and the finale of the movie takes place early Sunday morning. So yeah, it's like everybody's getting on with their lives. I mean, Radio Raheem was just, he was here and gone, man.
Well, it's the idea that like some of this stuff is so normalized. This kind of, I mean, that's a big deal. Like, you know, fucking pizza place in your block burns to the ground as a result of a riot, and and as a result of somebody dying, killed by the police. You would think that you know, there'd be mourning or something, but that's not how he chooses to present it. In fact, I mean, even through the character Mookie, what does Mookie do when he wakes up? Got to get paid. Got to get down there and get paid.
Got to go get paid.
Like suddenly Radio Raheem is like kind of in the rearview mirror already. It's just like, well, and one of the great moments of the scene where Mookie goes to get paid, he goes to Sal, which Sal gives one of my favorite like little monologues about how he built the place.
What the fuck is wrong with you? This ain't about money. I could give a fuck about money. You see this fucking place? I built this fucking place with my bare fucking hands! Every light socket, every piece of tile, me with these fucking hands! You know what the fuck that means?
Is actually when Sal like crumples up the money and gives him $500, and then he takes what he's owed, and he's like, I owe you $50, Sal. And then right before he leaves, he picks up the other $200.
Yeah, because he needs the money.
Yeah, because he's just like, yeah, that's Mookie. Mookie's gonna like he feigns integrity, but he's
right.
But he's really kind of just like, nah, man, I need to get this money. You know, and it's funny. There's a little connection. Mookie actually reappears in another Spike Lee movie. In 2012, Spike Lee made this movie called Red Hook Summer, and it is revealed that Mookie still works for Sal.
Life is a snare, but come inside the sanctified walls of God. Get the man with the hat on.
4 days.
Come inside the sanctified walls of God and you shine your light on the outside.
Mr. Mookie, come to Old Timers Day.
Hell to the nah.
It figures.
By the name of Mookie from a film.
Mr. Mookie.
Mr. Mookie. Now.
You want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Well, at the end of Do the Right Thing, the citizens of Bed-Stuy, do or die, burnt Sal's pizzeria to the ground. And Sal, not having the vision to see the gentrification which was going to come to Bed-Stuy, said, I'm getting the hell out of here. So Sal took the check, his two sons, Pino and Vito, and they set up shop again in Red Hook. But the thing was, Sal could not find somebody to replace Mookie because the people he was hiring from Mexico, from Ecuador, they were going to the wrong address.
Wrong address.
The pizza's cold. People complaining. The cheese on one side. And so he called Mookie up. And Mookie said, Sal, I'll come back on one condition. You got to put some sisters and brothers on the wall.
Well, I was happy to see him. I was happy to see him.
And then Sal said, Mookie, we got a black president. So you know I had to put some black people on the wall. And that was the biggest hug between Sal, Pino, Vito, and it's all love in Red Hook, Sal's famous pizzeria. And Mookie is the world's oldest pizza delivery man.
I like that.
But he's the best, though.
Yeah. Red Hook Summer is like this movie about this, young black kid that goes to live with his grandfather, who's like a preacher, and in an area that's very similar to like what takes place in Do the Right Thing. and there's like 2 scenes with Mookie delivering pizzas. Like somebody's trying to proselytize to him.
Mr. Mookie, you have a moment for Jehovah today.
Hell to the nah.
Jehovah loves you.
No. Mookie, when you gonna leave South Stamos and come on over there to Little Heaven, son? Gotta get paid.
And he keeps going. It was just funny because he's, it's, old man Spike Lee bringing back Mookie.
I mean, that's so typical because you wouldn't expect anything more of Mookie. I mean, Mookie doesn't... Listen, there are people in my life who I'm not going to name on this podcast that Mookie completely fucking reminds me of. People who talk all kinds of fucking game about doing something, about this big plan that they have, about how they're going to get over and blah, 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 and fucking 10 years later haven't touched a goddamn thing. And I'm the kind of person who, I've had a lot of different plans in my life. I've had a lot of grand visions. Only a few of them have panned out. But I've fucking gone for the ones that I've gone for. And Mookie is the kind of dude who's just floating along on the fucking breeze. He's waiting for somebody like Sal to provide him with the opportunity to kind of make just enough to skirt by so that he doesn't have to fucking get bitched at by his fucking Puerto Rican girlfriend who's always yelling at him, and his fucking sister who's always telling him to fucking get... I don't want to hear any of that.
That's like, part of the point of the Greek chorus. Coconut is talking to ML. Is it ML? And Sweet Dick Willie. Yeah. And ML's like ranting about the Koreans.
Look at those Korean motherfuckers across the street. I bet you they haven't been off the boat a year before they open up their own place. That's right, man. It's been about a year. A motherfucking year off the motherfucking boat, and they already got a business in our neighborhood. A good business.
The Koreans they move in and they start their stores, and now we have to buy stuff from them. They're taking opportunity away from black people. And Coconut, Frankie Faison, is just like, man, it's like we're never gonna fucking start a business. That building's been empty for a decade. Like, you're not gonna do that. You should have done it, I guess. Like, you can't hate on somebody for actually achieving something.
Right. And then Sweet Dick Willie says,
You motherfuckers always talking that old Keith Sweat shit. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. You ain't gonna do a goddamn thing. You ain't but sit y'all monkey ass on this corner. Hey, man, when you gonna get your business? Huh? Yeah, just like I thought. You ain't gonna do a goddamn thing. But I tell you what,
shit, I'm gonna go over to those Koreans myself and get... It's Miller time, motherfucker. I'm gonna go give them some of my money right now.
Oh my God, Sweet Dick Willie. Actually, unfortunately, Robin Harris died a year after this came out, or the same year it came out. He was a stand-up comedian. He was out on the road, had a heart attack, and died in a hotel.
Yeah, I remember one of the last artifacts of my remembrances of the hood was actually Bebe's kids.
I goes to pick her up the next day. She got 3 more kids with her. What's this?
These are children.
Oh, wait, you said you had a kid.
These are Bebe's kids.
Which was... Bebe's Kids was the animated movie that they produced after he died. They were going to produce Bebe's Kids was supposed to be a live-action movie with him starring in it. Mm-hmm. And dude, this shit, he could have had a fucking brilliant comedy career. That dude has such impeccable comic timing that he could have been great. He could have produced all kinds of shit. All that terrible hack shit that Ice Cube did in the late 90s, it should have been fucking Robin Harris's, and he should have fucking made $8 million off of that shit. And Sweet Dick Willie just goes down as one of my favorite side characters of all time. Somewhere out there, there's like 12 hours of B-roll of those 3 dudes just sitting on the corner talking shit. And dude, I would sit there and watch that DVD all fucking day. Those dudes are so fucking hilarious, just riffing.
Oh, they are. They're great. They're great. I mean, and I love the mix of, like, you put Robin Harris with somebody who's like more serious, like Frankie Faison. People don't know who Frankie Faison is. He is Barney from Silence of the Lambs.
Hi, I'm Barney.
But like the dynamic between those guys, and I love it when Bugging Out. That's like one of my favorite moments in the movie, and just on like kind of a very superficial level, when Bugging Out goes over to them and tries to get them into the boycott Sal's movement.
Hell no, goddammit. Sal ain't never done it to you before, man, and me neither. Hear me? What you ought to do is boycott that goddamn barber that fucked up your head.
Yeah,
Shit. He'll come around here fucking with Sweet Dick Willie.
Go on, man, get out.
Get the fuck away, man.
Go on, beat it.
Yeah,
Sally
no,
did nothing to me. I'm gonna go over there and get a slice.
Yeah, and you know, just when he drops one of my favorite deep cuts of all time, and this goes back to the time section of my notes, where one of the things that they're constantly bringing up in this movie is the disconnect between the older black generation and the younger black generation. When Radio Raheem walks by the Greek chorus with his boombox blaring Public Enemy, Fight the Power.
Oh, God damn, man! Cut that shit down! To play some Bobby Blue Man or something, fucker!
All three of those old black dudes are like, oh, God, they react like they got a fucking mouthful of vinegar. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Sweet Dick Willie goes, hey, man, why don't you turn that shit off and put on some Bobby Blue Bland or some shit? Now, listen, the only person, I had to look that up back in the day. The only person who fucking knows who Bobby Blue Bland is like a dude like Sweet Dick Willie, like a 15-year-old black dude who, you know what I mean? But I've known some of these dudes, like older black dudes.
Yeah.
They didn't grow up on fucking hip hop. And when hip hop came out, they were the same way that white people were with punk rock and heavy metal. They were like, fuck this shit. We don't want to hear this shit. And when he walks by and Sweet Dick Willie says, hey, put on some Bobby Blue Bland, that's just like one of the deepest cuts. Fucking Robin Harris, great comic timing.
Well, that's like I have tons of experience with dudes like that, old black guys. I used to work in a bar. I used to be a bartender when I first moved down south, and those guys are kind of the equivalent of barflies. You know, they come up every day at 5:30. They just chill out and drink beers and shoot the shit. I used to talk to them all the time, talking about music and all that kind of stuff. So they introduced me to a lot of cool stuff, actually.
But it's just that disconnect between the generations where it's like, the older generation, Sweet Dick Willie, he had his day. He probably had his day with the cops and everything. It's hinted at in the scene where the cops drive by and they like give the side eye to those dudes and they both give like the hairy eye.
What a waste. Yeah, what a waste.
Yeah, and both of them say what a waste to each other. The cops say it to the guys and the guys say it to the cops. And I don't think that in that scene they hear each other.
No, they don't. No.
Yeah, I think that they're both saying it to each other. Oh, I'm so glad you picked up on that. But, the way that the older generation is now is they don't want to be bothered with that shit. You know what I mean? They've been through that shit. They've dealt with the cops. They've dealt with all this shit. And now the younger generation coming up still being antagonistic in your face. But now they have all this new privilege.
But I do think, though, that there is something, this is something Spike Lee's talked about a lot, is the dereliction of duty of families in the black community and fathers, right? Because those guys, those older guys, they probably have their fathers in their lives. And it's kind of intimated that a lot of the younger black people, they don't have any leadership. They don't have any guidance. They're just out there kind of, they're street kids, right? They're out there just kind of figuring shit out themselves with nobody to tell them what to do.
Yeah, they have and the guidance that they do have is very superficial, like in the scene where Pino and Mookie are talking about the black leaders. And
I've been listening and reading.
You been reading now?
I read. I've been reading about your leaders, Reverend Al, Mr. Do, Sharp Tone, Jesse. Keep hope alive.
That's fucked up.
Keep hope alive.
Hey, that's fucked. Don't talk about Jesse.
And even the other guy, what's his name? Farrakhan.
Minister Farrakhan.
Right, sorry. Minister Farrakhan. Anyway, Minister Farrakhan always talks about the so-called day when the black man will rise. We will one day, what does he say? We will one day rule the earth as we did in our glorious past.
Yeah, that's right.
What past you talking about? I mean, what did I miss?
We started civilization.
Man, keep dreaming, man. Then you woke up.
Pino, fuck you, fuck your fucking pizza, and fuck Frank Sinatra.
Yeah? Well, fuck you too, and fuck Michael Jackson.
And Mookie is defending these dudes and saying, no, pay respect to Minister Farrakhan. Minister Farrakhan, you know what I mean? Respect him. And then, he's like you said, he's faking this integrity. He's feigning this respect for Minister Farrakhan. Where right at the beginning of the movie, those Nation of Islam ladies come up to him and he's like, hell no. They don't even get a word out of their mouths. They
Yeah.
have their fucking copies of the final call with them. I think one of them's actually holding the bean pie, and Mookie's just like, hell no. He doesn't want anything to do with them. But when it comes time for black solidarity against white people, Mookie's like, oh, Minister Farrakhan.
Well, but that's very true to the spirit of Spike Lee.
Yeah.
Spike Lee is that guy in that circumstance. He's not a Muslim. He doesn't want to be a Muslim. But at every chance he gets, he pays respect to Louis Farrakhan and Jesse Jackson and others. I was kind of dived into his filmography a little bit, watched a few other movies. I hadn't watched Malcolm X in a long time, so I watched Malcolm X. Ended up watching a bunch of interviews. And when Louis Farrakhan told him that he had nothing to do with the murder of Malcolm X.
What did you ask Louis Farrakhan? I've been in that palace. What did you ask him?
I asked him what was the nation's involvement in the assassination of Malcolm X. I asked him about the split between Malcolm and Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he was one of the best interviews I got.
Yeah. And what did he say about that? Because I've never heard him speak out on what he might have known about the death of Malcolm.
Well, what he did say, he did own up.
Because he, in a sense, was the successor.
Yes, what he did, he owned up to the fact that he was responsible for a lot of the climate that permitted, what happened. And that he was saying that he hoped that this film heals wounds and doesn't open it.
Spike Lee was like, okay, good enough for me. Moving on.
Right.
And you're like, Spike, he fucking knows better too. But I think Spike looks at it as this kind of like you were saying, like with Mookie, it's kind of like this kind of blind solidarity. He's like, well, this is what we have, so this is what I got to work with.
Well, I mean, I think that topic comes up a lot in the film in the terms of, look, this is something that we need to talk about more in America, but especially white people, we're not allowed to talk about the idea of the ethnic solidarity that comes behind everything. This is sort of personified in the scene where the white dude in the Larry Bird jersey scuffs bugging out sneakers.
Yeah.
And, the black dudes are getting all pissed off and antagonistic and shit, and they're doing that that's one of the most accurate scenes to living in the hood when the black dude gets up in his face and he's like,
Yo, man, your Jordans are fucked up. Damn, man, you might as well throw them shits out. Them shits is broke. Man, they looked at it good before he messed up. He did the shit on purpose, man. He was even talking about your mama.
I heard that shit. You make me so fine.
Yo, man, how much you pay for him?
$100. American dollars.
108 with tax. I give him 100 headaches. Look, you lucky the black man has a loving heart. Next time you see me coming, man, you cross the street quick.
they're just trying to egg him on to get into this fight. Egg him on. And then at the very end of the scene, he says, I think that Bugging Out is trying to save face while also not getting into the fight because
Bugging Out clearly does not actually want to make good on his threats.
Exactly, he's not a fighter. So in order to break that tension, he says, "Hey man, why don't you go back to Massachusetts?" Which is a clear reference to the Larry Bird jersey.
Yeah.
And the white guy says, "Hey, I was born in Brooklyn," and all the black people are like,
"Oh." Dude, that makes me that was hilarious though. It's so funny because it's such a great line. It's such the white guy moving into the poor neighbor, the gentrification thing. It is funny.
Sean, he owns this brownstone. Okay, he's drinking his pint of orange juice. Dude, I've never seen a pint of orange juice be less appetizing than that pint.
I know. That's I was watching that because I've watched it, like you, 3 or 4 times over the past couple weeks, and I'm like, why the fuck is he's drinking fucking orange juice?
He's drinking orange juice, and
98 degrees out.
He's so sweaty. You know that orange juice is filled with sweat and backwash and shit. And it's just oh, dude, throw that out. Don't finish that. But the whole point of that line is to show that at the end of the day, he is wearing the jersey of a great white basketball player.
Yeah.
That basketball player does not play for the team that he's supposed to root for geographically. What it comes back to is ethnic solidarity. And we have now a situation in America where white people, it's fucking illegal to have ethnic solidarity with other white people. You know what I'm saying? They're straight up fucking, they will, if I claim ethnic solidarity with you, they will extradite me to Germany to punish me for my grandfather's crimes at Auschwitz and shit. That's how it is for white people in America now. But
there's no such thing as a white power pin. There's no such thing as white pride. Like that's not like it's taboo. It's not allowed. I mean, granted, I'll say that like I think the way that it manifests in both communities is ultimately a negative, in my opinion. Even whether it's like black supremacy, black power, or if it's like the kind of small pockets in the country that would like outwardly say like like the white power, white solidarity.
Right, but at the end of the day, the ADL isn't going to call the FBI and tell them to kick down your door because you wore a black power pendant. They'll kick down your door if you're wearing a white power pendant. But
I mean it's mainstream. It's almost like it's a control mechanism. It's not even real. It's a method of control from like the media and pop culture to keep people feeling the way they do about each other, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. If only we knew who controlled pop culture. But like the idea that you're going to choose when the shit gets real, when the shit gets tough, you're going to choose ethnic solidarity over something else. That's been proven time and time again in human history. In fact, I was on the phone with one of my friends from Boston when this race stuff started to pop off last summer, and we were talking about how when the race riots pop off, we're going to have to shoot around each other because he's black and I'm white. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to choose each other. We're going to have to choose our sides. I mean, even though we're friends, we're going to have to like shoot around each other. You know what I mean? But that might be like some dark humor, but that's like where we're heading here in America, where like we have this slow simmering ethnic conflict bubbling beneath the scenes, but we have all this like, we all know each other. We're all neighbors. Like, what's going on?
But the problem is, I think, is because we've turned the concept of being like a nationalist or having national pride as a dirty thing, and you can't acknowledge it. You can't come under the banner of being American. Like that's a lot of things. I think for at least for some parts of our history in this country, that's important. You have to have a national identity. If you don't, you see what's happening now. The bifurcation, everything being like we're living through a time literally right now where people are encouraging each other to resegregate. And it's not like white. It's not white people doing it. Well, I mean, white people play along. White people play along. Like, hey, I understand. I make you feel uneasy. I understand. Even I've known you since I was 7, but I make you feel uneasy, brother. I understand. Like, go have your. And it starts with small things. It starts with like graduation ceremonies. It starts with like dances. It starts with places to hang out at the park, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. But I do like I think the problem in our country is that we have turned the concept of being American into a dirty word, like a dirty concept, and I don't understand it. Like it's okay to have problems with your government and what your government does and what your government does under your, I guess in some way you're the name of the country. I understand that, but there are a lot of worthy things to fight for in terms of virtue. And like kind of I guess perspective that America is unique and we should fight for these fucking things. We should not be throwing them away. We should not allow ourselves to be like torn apart by kind of immutable characteristics that at the end of the day, if you didn't get to choose how you were born, the color of your skin, like then it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But I don't know. That's just me. But I understand people are tribal. And in times like this, you tend to coalesce. You tend to congregate in times of strife and stress with people that that are more closer to you.
It's weird. It's like there is this cross section of an example from the movie. One of the smaller details that I never noticed before. When they're carting Radio Raheem's corpse away in the cop car, the Korean guy is like banging on the cop car. The Korean shop owner, he's got his hand on the cop car, he's running behind it, and then at the end, before the cops speed away, he like bangs on it. Yeah. And earlier in the movie, he and Radio Raheem were motherfucking each other. You know what I mean? Motherfuck you. And there's this kind of like idea that even though the multicultural experiment is a violent one and one that is going to take some of our lives and one that is going to fuck people's lives up, that also there are moments of solidarity between people. I mean, I lived in many different multicultural neighborhoods, and while there is always there's always racial tension, there's always ethnic tension, there's also always people who know each other across these categories, and who, when the shit hits the fan, end up caring for each other. It's an extremely precarious place in America. I mean, you hear people online talking about, like, the race war is going to pop off, the race war is going to pop off. Well, what the fuck is the race war going to look like for a person like me? I have 6 nieces and nephews that are half black.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law is a black Puerto Rican woman. What does the race war look like for me? Like, it's such a weird situation in America where we have these bubbling tendencies from 400 years ago just colliding with the notions of today and the people we are today, and it's
but so much of it's manufactured, though. I mean, this comes from the intelligentsia. This comes from Ivy League schools. This comes from, and it's been going on since the 60s, this deconstructionist project about how, like, your tangible reality is actually not as important as how you feel about it. And that's very pernicious. It's a very pernicious idea. I mean, like, how can people not feel racial tension when you are inundated day in and day out with fucking images and hate, as Mookie yells at the end of the movie? Like, how could you not feel tense? How could you not feel tense? I have a lot of, like, empathy for young black people that just get inundated being told that the fucking world hates them. And white people want you to die, and they don't care about you. Like, that's really destructive, and it's not coming naturally. It's not like I live in a very not to be a cool white guy, but I just have a very diverse neighborhood. I live in a working class neighborhood. Everybody here is just trying to get along to go along. You know, it's never an issue. Nothing ever like that ever comes up in our little cul-de-sac that I live on. But I do think as much as there is a natural aspect to the way that people tribalize and how that controls kind of where they coalesce, the types of people they hang out with, etc., I think a lot of this is artificial. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I think some of it is and some of it isn't. I think that, humans are always going to draw our natural boundaries between each other, and race and ethnicity are always going to be important. But, like in the movie, when Sal's sitting with Pino and he's saying, look, some of these kids grew up on my food. I saw them when they were little kids, and now they're older people. And the older people have gotten even older. And they've all come here and loved my food. You're right. There is so much potential for people to just get along together and to be together. And in many neighborhoods that I lived in, kind of in Boston, where it's like there's all different kinds of people living in this neighborhood, and day to day we all go to our jobs and we all get things done and we all do what we need to do. But then when you were to open up the Boston Metro, you read this scathing article about gentrification or some other thing. You know what I mean? And I do believe that some of it is manufactured. At the end of the day.
Well, because we have serious problems in this country, right? And if you have a population of people that can't even agree on, like, the objective reality of their circumstances, of their situations, or how people feel about each other, how the fuck are you ever supposed to organize and move past it?
Well, yeah, that's a great thing for the ruling class of this country. And as much as I'm a person who doesn't believe that we're all going to hold hands together,
no, of course not,
in the future, it is advantageous to the ruling class of this country. I think it's one of the several. The ruling class of this country wants mass immigration for multiple reasons. None of them have to do with human rights. None of them have to do with bringing these people here to get a better American life. It has to do with cheap labor and fucking people over and treating people like economic units. I mean, the elites of this country do not care about any of us. And, the future that they have in store for us doesn't have anything to do with unity, doesn't have anything to do with multiculturalism, doesn't have anything to do with that. All that shit is just tools for them to move people from one space to another. You know, I think that they have the notion that there's too many fucking people in this world. I don't want to get too conspiratorial about shit because this is about do the right thing and not about Alex Jones. But I mean, the people who run this world know that there are finite resources in this world. You can't have a human population that grows exponentially forever. You just can't. And
and then there's ideological lines as well, because we have in America, we have in Western civilized society, I suppose, the notion of like, hey man, don't have too many kids, don't overextend in that way. That's been a message since I was a kid in popular culture. Abortions being cool, et cetera, et cetera. And but then you have other populations in the world. You have like Islamists that are booming. Their populations are fucking booming.
Yeah,
and then they want to export that here.
Yeah,
which is so bizarre, because it's like those are, in terms of value systems, pretty different.
Yeah, but what they also know is that within 2 generations of coming to a country like America, those value systems are fucking gone. Those
No,
people
but not. Hey, hold on. I got to push back a little bit. Not when you bring over 20 million people at a time. It doesn't, because they create enclaves.
They do create enclaves, but it is across the board shown that birth rates plummet in groups of people when they come to Western countries. Within 2 generations of coming to a Western country, those 8 child families become 3 child families. And while there is a sort of a reclamation of identity, especially with second generation immigrants, as soon as they get here and get the Buffalo Wild Wings, they like become like fat consumers. And I think that the rub behind it, Sean, is to replace the fat consumers that they already have with much cheaper and more compliant fat consumers. I think that's literally part of the rub.
Okay, fair enough. I can, yeah, because it's about it's about consumerism. It's about, I guess, the profit motive. Like nobody, like you said, like no, this is not about human rights. This is about the bottom line.
Yeah, this isn't about groups of people. This isn't about ethnicities and societies and cultures and everything. They, like, the people who run the world, they don't see shit like that anymore.
No, it's like completely a class thing. But like, it's not to be like, reductionist like that, but that's the part of the problem, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't, like, if we allow ourselves to be force-fed strife constantly, force-fed this idea that we all secretly hate each other, we will never overcome that paradigm. We'll never do it.
I think that black people definitely hate white people.
Oh, I think some of them do. I think some. I think some. I mean, now it's more like it's been mainstreamed, right? Like it's now you have politicians. You have like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, like these things. Not just to be like like a right-wing guy or whatever, but those people launder these ideas in a much more mainstream way. They've become much more mainstream acceptable to just be like a kind of openly racist, because they, back in like 2014, they redefined the word and just kept insisting that it meant something different than everybody understood for 100 years. So,
Yeah, I mean, anti-whiteness is the soup du jour, and I don't think that it's probably the soup of the year or the century. And, you're going to see it from both sides of the aisle. Trust me, if we were to take a scalpel to it, we would see just as many so-called conservatives dishing up the anti-whiteness as you'd see from what's her name, Ocasio-Cortez. But I think that part of it is manufactured, but I think that part of it is also that you can't have groups of people like we have in America with the histories that we have, and you just keep adding on to it. More people coming in from different parts of the world. All of a sudden you have cities where 180 languages are spoken, and you have to have all that shit translated onto the voting ballots. I mean, you have people who don't have any social linguistic, ethnic connectivity to each other. When I lived in Boston, it was all like we had our own little neighborhoods. How the fuck can people?
Yeah.
How can people in Chinatown vote for their mayor with the same people that voting in East Boston, the same people who are voting in Southie, the same people who are voting in Dorchester? It's like we're all in our ethnic little enclaves. None of us experience the same city as the other people experience.
No, dude, I couldn't get a job moving when I lived in Boston. I couldn't get a job moving furniture because I was not bilingual.
Yeah, and so
I mean,
what you
like for like the Salvation Army.
no for real.
Bunch of white guys run it, but they're like, "Hey, do you speak Spanish?" And I was
Right,
like,
yeah.
"No." I mean, like I like kind
You
of,
speak
but
Spanish
not really.
for $6 an hour. I mean, at the end of the day, you end up with this Tower of Babel scenario where it's like, how many different groups of people can we stuff in here? And, you know, the people who run this scenario are supposed to be intelligent. If they were smart, they would see that this isn't going to work. So either they're stupid and incompetent or they have very malicious plans for us. Either one of those scenarios are very bad.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You know, and at the end of the day, when it boils down to what, like, boots on the ground tangibility, what does it boil down to? Like a white cop choking out a black kid and then a neighborhood setting itself on fire. And it's not like this is a cliche. This is a fucking thing, as we've said many times in this episode. This happens all the time in America now. It's not even, it's almost not even news anymore.
Well, that's like the crazy thing about Do the Right Thing is that there were so many like modern parallels to draw, especially because like, you know, when people have an outpouring of anger or whatever, and if people want to rationalize like, you know, burning down Souths, right? You're just destroying your own community. Like that, like, and there's even a fucking line in Do the Right Thing where Mookie says,
And you watched them burn me down.
I watched it. I also watched the cops murder Ray Raheem. You didn't get over from the fucking insurance anyway, Sal. You know the deal.
What the fuck is wrong with you? This ain't about money.
I was like, holy fuck, is this today? Because that's what everybody says. Like, you know, I burned down your family carpet store, but don't worry about it, man. You got insurance. Don't worry about it. Like,
Yeah,
because people have no concept of how that stuff actually works in the real world.
No, and this ridiculous false parallel that they draw when they say, oh, well, you know, what you're doing is valuing white property more than you're valuing black lives. Well, that is a complete misconception of what that property means to the people who actually built it. That is their lives, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was Kenosha. Not Kenosha, maybe Milwaukee. It was, you know, there's an interview with an elderly black woman that's like, they burned down the CVS. Like, I don't own a car. Where the fuck am I supposed to go to get, like, my medicine? I have diabetes.
And to this day, Spike Lee insists that Mookie's act of throwing that can through the window was a legitimate act of rage. And he'll sit there in an interview all smug with his fucking affectless, you know, look, I love Spike Lee. But when he starts talking this shit, it's like, okay, dude, this is where we're getting back to the ethnic solidarity, where you have your head so far up your own ass that you don't even hear what you're saying. And he starts spouting that shit about black lives being less valued than white property.
Mookie did not throw the garbage can through the window to divert the mob from jumping on Sal, Vito, and Pino. Mookie threw the garbage can through the window because he just saw one of his best friends murdered in cold blood by NYPD.
In 20 years since the film came out, no black person ever asked me why Mookie threw the garbage can through the window. Only white people ask that question. Still today. No black person ever asked me that.
Listen, man, there is no connectivity between what the police did to Radio Raheem and Sal's being burned down. That is a complete act of aggression and rage. And that is why countries like Liberia are the way that they are. Because there is a disconnect between the way I think black people and white people look at the concept of property. And, you know,
well,
black people see it as a legitimate act of expression to just fucking destroy property, whereas white people are like, we kind of see that there's no connectivity between these two things, and whereas black people say, oh, well, it's legitimate because we feel the rage.
I mean, maybe there's something to be said about, like, generationally, like, black people being disenfranchised from actually, like, having a concept of ownership. And I don't say that to be, like, an asshole or weird or anything, but not being encouraged in their own communities to build their own communities up, so they have no sense of like its value, which is kind of links to what Sal says, like his monologue at the end of the movie, where he's like, I built this fucking thing with my own hands, every tile, every fixture, every light switch. I did that. Like that's why it's meaningful. That's why it's important to him. It's not about the money. It's about those deeper roots, those deeper sense of accomplishment, that long view that we were talking about earlier, like about the concept in the movie that like a lot of these people, they just don't have like a long view about what their life is. But Sal, throughout the film, actually does have that. He's always talking to his sons. He even jokes with the cops. He's like, yeah, I'm going to build a skyscraper here. I'm going to stay here for 50 years. Like Sal like thinks about his legacy. And he tells his sons, he's like, you're going to run this place someday. Like that's more than I think a lot of the other characters interact with in terms of like their own community. They feel kind of they feel feckless, I suppose. And I think that's something that is, in terms of just like the wanton destruction and looting and all the stuff that's like this past year was like such an intense microcosm of a larger issue of just like the value and respect for accomplishment for your own communities, because it's just reactions. Nobody is thinking 10 minutes ahead of themselves. They're just reacting because I'm upset. Just in the same way Mookie does when he throws the trash can through the window.
Yeah, and it's like, so much of that hood mentality is driven by that idea that there's nothing, there's no tomorrow, there's just like the next fresh set of sneakers. And it's just this nihilistic, materialistic view, and, I don't know, man. What as two white guys can we say to people in the hood? What could I say going back to my old street? Like if I went back to my old street that I grew up on, which is like a fucking crater in the earth now, and I walked up to like the 15-year-old black kids who were on, my old block now, and we're like, guys,
get it together.
What you really need to do is just like, get yourselves together and like get a job and work hard and start thinking about your future. I get laughed off the fucking stage. In fact, I wouldn't have any sneakers when I left that scenario. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, 30 years on from, it was already nihilistic and materialistic and shitty and feckless in 1989 when the story's being told. Now it's 32 years later. You've seen nothing but shit get worse. Like, where the fuck are we supposed to go from here?
Well, that's the problem. Like, there's no eye to solving the actual problem. And back in the day, Spike Lee was a person that at least like seemed like he was trying to put out not solutions, but like the idea that like we should talk about the real problems that go on in these communities. Let's talk about the real problems. Not so much anymore. I mean, Spike Lee is fuck, I don't know, man. Like I think 25th Hour is like his last great movie.
I agree.
But like, cause he has become just kind of a dumb asshole. Like in a way that I went back because I listened to so many interviews, and he's so thoughtful about the things he says and how he approaches things. Not to say that I always agreed with him, but I at least understood what he was saying. And now he's a guy that just kind of latches on to whatever social event is happening and then recontextualizes his own work to say that, like, yeah, man, that's the real shit. That's what I've always been talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
like he abandoned the kind of the paternal responsibility that he had given to himself as a young filmmaker, as a young artist, trying to like get out like real stories and trying to express kind of like the real problems in the community. Dude, my jaw dropped when I listened to that Malcolm X interview when he was talking about Malcolm X and talking about like fatherlessness. I was like, okay, Richard Spencer, like, you're not allowed to even say that. You're not even allowed to suggest that that's a problem. And he directly addresses it in the fucking movie and Do the Right Thing with the mother, like when, the mayor, Ossie Davis's character, saves that kid. And then the mother comes down with her, like, her matriarchal rage.
Eddie, is that the truth?
Eddie, you hear me talking to you. Come on, I'm talking to you, boy.
You're gonna be fine, miss. Just fine.
What I tell you about lying? Yo, get upstairs now! And when your father come home, he gonna wear your little nail behind out, too.
Miss, you didn't have to hit your boy like that. He's already scared to death.
I appreciate you helping my Eddie. I truly do. But I'll have nobody question how I raised him, not even his daddy.
And like, you know, because that's something that is such a big part of black communities, is just kind of like mothers having to figure this shit out for themselves, and it's almost impossible. It's like you add a neighborhood like that to being a single parent, and like, what the fuck are you supposed to do?
But I mean, now it's like, you know, we're everyone's on such pins and needles with the black community, especially white people. I mean, you have corporate backing. I just saw, geez, was it Lockheed Martin? There was some major company that is doing yet another anti-white brainwashing corporate event where like the entire line now, the entire push now is that being on time, working hard, having a family, being organized, thinking about the future.
Whiteness.
This is all associated with whiteness. Now listen, old bigot Danny isn't going to disagree with that, but I'm agreeing with them for the wrong reasons. Like, you're going to sit there and tell me that black people can't be on time? Like, you as the corporate diversity officer are telling me that black people can't be on time. But if I were to say that, then, you know, the ADL kicks down my door and get a flashbang through my fucking window. And now all of a sudden, like, Pepsi Cola is saying, well, yeah, I mean, black people have a tough time being on time, so therefore being on time is whiteness.
Yeah, but can you imagine how
being on time, white privilege? What the fuck does that even mean?
I mean, think about how damaging that is to the psychology of that community. The rationalization that you don't have to do anything positive. You don't have to be like a responsible adult. Like, hey man, we understand like your people have gone through a lot.
That combined with the on the other side, white people being told like, hey man, if Rashid pulled you out of your car and beat your head in with a brick, like maybe he inferred a little bit of racism about the way you pulled up to that stoplight. And the white person's just like, yeah, you know, you're right. There is institutional racism about the way stoplights are, and you know, and it's just like this horrible amalgamation of events where black people get told like you can basically do whatever you want now, and white people are told like, look, you're gonna have to take it.
Well, dude, there's a story, I can't remember. I'll try to look it up and put it in the podcast if I can find it. This is because it's a little obscure. But there was a guy that took in a Somali immigrant, let him stay at his house.
Good idea, by the way.
But the Somali immigrant ended up raping this man. And when the man was interviewed about it, he rationalized being raped. He rationalized it. He said, you know, near the completion of his prison sentence, Hawken received yet another phone call from authorities, informing him that the man would be deported straight back to Somalia upon the end of his term. At that moment, Hawken recalled having an emotional response. The tears, they came. I felt relief and joy that he was going away forever, he said. However, Hawken also recalled having a feeling of guilt and responsibility upon hearing the news. It was I who was the reason why he should not be left in Norway, but rather be late for a very uncertain future in Somalia. He had already served his sentence in prison. Should he now be punished again? And this time much harder, he pondered. He went on to say, I do not feel angered towards the perpetrator, for I see him most as a product of an unjust world, a product of an upbringing marked by war and deprivation. I am a heterosexual man and I was raped by another, presumably heterosexual man, he said, stressing that sexual abuse in the perpetrator's culture is mostly about power rather than desire. It is not regarded as a homosexual act being the one who exerts power and raping. He concluded by stressing that the refugees need continued support. I have been a victim of an injustice in a dark part of the world that we are largely shielded from here at home, Hawken said, adding that he is part of the world and the world is unfortunately unfair.
just star stuff. Wow, great story, Sean. Now back to the show.
You know, obviously not a good thing, but you know, you got to think about, you know, it's a different culture. Like
Dude.
you're like, dude.
There are myriad stories in the last few years of people of color, BIPOCs, doing horrible, terrible, life-altering or ending things to white people, and then those white people's family making all kinds of excuses, like that girl who got killed, like raped and killed while she was out jogging in a cornfield, and her dad was like, you know what? It's okay that a Hispanic immigrant did it because I like tacos. And if
Yeah.
you think that's a fucking exaggeration, go look up the fucking story. The dude was out talking about how much he likes tacos and he forgives the Hispanic community. And it's like, dude, listen, there's a fucking low-level ethnic sectarian war going on in America right now. White people have no fucking idea that it's going on, and they're basically just marks. They're basically just like gazelle out in a fucking field, you know. And when something bad happens, white people will do absolutely anything they can to rationalize the bad thing that happened. It's fucking really, really disheartening, and I don't think it spells a very good future for folks that are dealing with that shit out there.
Well, it's because this is what happens when you kind of transport or import cultures that are vastly different in terms of their value systems and how they operate than your own. And when you do it in such high numbers, and there's no effort to assimilation. Assimilation has become a dirty word. You're not even allowed to say it. Like, why wouldn't you want people, like, if you want to come to America, like, why do you want to come to America? Isn't it because of the opportunities, the way we live our lives, et cetera, et cetera? But no, you're not even allowed to suggest that anymore. It's like every other culture is, like, I'm not a moral relativist. I'm like, we fought, bled, died, everything to get where we are as a species in terms of like the American experiment, which is far from perfect. But at least like there is a at least it isn't like, you know, people being murdered and raped in the streets like indiscriminately, like, and then everybody just being shrugging their shoulders and being like, well, hey, that's just the way it is. The idea that like we want to like accept that as a reality is so absurd, and we want to accept it as the reality because people don't want to be called racist if they don't want it to happen to them. Like that's like the real insidious part of it, in my opinion. It's like not even about like whether it's right or it's like, oh, I don't want to, you know, step on anyone's toes. I don't want to be called a racist. A racist for what? Because you don't want to get fucking killed in your neighborhood.
Well, I mean, actually, I recently I got into an argument with a friend of mine. She was telling me that I needed to go to therapy for my racism because I expressed to her that one of the reasons that I live in one of the whitest parts of the world is that I experience what it's like to grow up going to school in the hood, and it's just not that great for white kids. And rather than take that experience that I had and take it at face value, she told me that I had PTSD and needed to get therapy. And
why do you? Yeah, but if you see, that's like a self-refuting argument because it's like, okay, well, why do I have PTSD?
Right, I said to her,
what happened to me?
I said to her, look, if you spent a few days in the hood that I grew up in, you'd probably need therapy too. But it's like, you know, these well-meaning white people, they have no idea what it means tangibly, boots on the ground, when ethnic violence and struggle comes to a head. Especially white people where I live, these people have never seen two black people in a room together. They don't know what it's like being in a crowd of angry black people, being the only fucking macadamia nut in the chocolate cookie. It's not a fucking great situation. Yeah. And they are so, I mean, dude, Putney, Peterborough, all these little towns, all these fucking rich white boomers falling over themselves on the weekend to hold up Black Lives Matter signs in the town square and try to get you to honk as you're passing by. Meanwhile, these people would never actually go to a black neighborhood. They would never actually go there.
No, but that
never spend time in that space.
Because it's an abstraction to them. Like it's an abstract concept. They're like, of course I believe in human rights. Of course I do. And that's all it means to them because they've never thought about the tangible realities of that. Like, you know, we can go all day long and talk about like, oh, you know, the oppression of what is it like to be a minority in any context, right? You're probably going to get some shit by You probably are. Like I think like human history has kind of bared that out to be true. So like the idea that like you could have been a minority in your school and somebody does not like understand that like yeah, it was probably bad for you. Like why is that like a controversial thing to say or feel? You know what I mean? Like it's just like, you know, if you could accept it on the other side, you have to also accept it like ubiquitously. Like you can't just like pick and choose when you feel people are downtrodden or oppressed or whatever. Like you can't. It doesn't make any sense.
In that nanosecond is where the shot is revealed, and the shot is not equality. The shot is equity. The shot is anti-whiteness. The shot is people who are white are being taken down a peg. You know, if the actual shot was us moving together into the future together, we would do that, but that's not what it is. It is to spread this specific. I don't even think that it's divisions among all races. I think that it's a very specific division against white people. It's even evident at the end of Do the Right Thing, where after they burn down Sal's, they go to burn down the Korean shop, and the Korean guy starts saying, "No, no, no!
I know why! I know why! I know why! I'm black!
What? Black?
Yeah, I'm black!
Me black! Me black! Where you black at? Me black!
I'm black!
Me!
You and me, same! We same!
Same? Me black! Open your eyes, motherfucker!
I'm black, I'm black." And they're saying, "Oh, you're not black." And he starts going, "Well, I'm not white, I'm not white." And so at the end of the day, it just becomes a coalition of everyone who's not white against white people. And that is even evident in a scene in a movie from 1989. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, white people end up in a very precarious situation where it's like, if you have two brain cells to rub together, you see that there is a coalition of people who actively are against you, who want to make policy against you, who want to vote as a bloc against you. But also, if you want to speak in your own interests, you are literally a neo-Nazi, and the ADL will fucking kick your door down through the FBI.
Yeah. Well, you know, the scene with it when the Korean shopkeeper is just like, I'm like you, I'm black, I'm black. It kind of made me laugh because this movie was produced and came out like a couple years before the LA riots. And if people don't know, during the LA riots, Korean shop owners were targeted.
Oh, the victims. I mean, my parents are good Christians. I mean, we've been through so much, and to go through this, I mean, everything 22 years down the drain.
Many Koreans who yesterday were the shopkeepers of South Central Los Angeles today have lost the businesses they took years to create.
What can I say? Are you going to have any word to say? This looks a comeback, John.
George Huang woke this morning to find his mini mall burnt to the ground. A loss of $1.5 million and a lifetime of dreams and effort.
I don't mind that. Whatever they need, take it out. But why they burn out the property? That's my question.
41 Korean businesses in South Central have been torched, dozens looted.
And they were murdered. They lost everything. There's a few big high-profile stories that came out of that. But the Korean community was completely attacked.
You want
out
to see
in the open.
You want to see some Chad Kings? Google rooftop Koreans.
There are 28 men, armed men, everyone with guns, on duty 24 hours a day, they tell me, protecting this store. They have done such a job here, they won't let me in, they won't let anyone in. You can see this is surrounded by a gate, and if Laurel can take the camera and pan across, there are men in cars, there are men with every single person is armed here, and they walk back and forth across the roof. But when I asked if they were a company that had been hired, they told me no, that they were just friends and employees.
That looks to be an Uzi. That man is.
Rooftop Koreans are from the LA riots. It was the Korean shop owners who went up on their roofs with assault rifles and just started picking motherfuckers off. But it's like, but in 2021, those Korean shop owners are committing injustice against black bodies because those black bodies should have the space to riot and loot. Well, space to destroy.
Well, like Radio Raheem, in the few scenes he has, I was like, oh, it's Michael Brown.
For serious.
I mean, honestly, like it's really not that far removed. It's almost like a direct parallel.
And listen, the hood is full. It is absolutely brimming with dudes who are like the last Nightcap episode that you did, which anybody who's watching, go check out the last episode of Nightcap. It is completely disheartening. It's about pimps and hoes. It's completely disgusting. And the hood is brimming over with these dudes. Should a police officer come down and kill one of these dudes while he's in the act of committing an assault or some other thing, the entire world and the entire world media will circle the wagons around this drug dealing, pimping asshole because he happened to be killed by a white cop. And so much of it is just manipulation. So much of it is storytelling, and it's fucking enraging.
It is, as a famous man once said, the info war. That's what it is. It's a propaganda war.
But, I think that at the end of the day, I mean, this movie still has so much to say about it because that individual action, that cycle that continues where it's like hood violence begats police interaction that begats some kind of murder against the black community that begats a riot that destroys the community and drives it even deeper into a cycle of violence. It's like, Jesus Christ, it hasn't stopped. It's only gotten worse. It has only gotten faster. It only repeats itself more and more. So where are we headed in the next 20 years?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, as
I
Spike
do.
Lee would say.
I
What's your answer?
We're the Turner Diaries.
Oh, Dan.
No, I mean, the Turner Diaries is a really terrible book, but I think that the first half of it, I mean, we're moving towards a country that is so balkanized and so racially and ethnically segregated that I think that the first like 4 chapters of the Turner Diaries are like totally within the next 15 years, where it's literally we're going to be living through actual ethnic strife. I mean, we already are living through it. We're living through ethnic strife right now in America. There's no other label to put on it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to a certain extent. I think that in a broad view we are, but I also think that happens in very specific places of the country. I think when you're like living in like small town America and stuff, it's kind of less of a thing, but like the possibility of it spilling over is definitely there. And I think that's what kind of goes back to what I was saying before, is like kind of the manufactured nature of some of this stuff, where it is literally trying to pitch you against your neighbor, no matter what. Like it's just, and some people, maybe because it's easy and maybe because it feels good to feel special, like you're a victim class, they will really latch onto that and make it part of their identity, rather than trying to just raise their families, work their jobs, live their lives. Like a little
I find it so interesting that these rashes of sectarian ethnic violence, these riots, these summers full of anarchist rage where entire cities burn to the ground, always tend to happen in election years.
Yeah, weird.
So, I don't know.
Well, I guess you could say the same thing about Israel and Palestine, but that's a different conversation. But
I could say a lot of things about Israel and Palestine.
Maybe after we get off here. Okay, just to bring it kind of back around to the movie a little bit. What's your favorite performance from the movie?
That is so difficult because it like we said at the beginning of this before we got into the spicy stuff. Every actor is just chewing a bone here. They are all. It's almost like they all found their character and just dove headfirst in. But I think Ozzie Davis probably gives my favorite performance.
Yeah.
Not only because he is such a different man than the mayor, but because the mayor is so likable and so. I I don't know. There's something so warm and inviting about that old man. Even though he's an old drunk, he's a bum hanging around the neighborhood. You feel for that man, and part of that feeling, that sympathy, is from Ozzie Davis's performance. He makes him a very likable character, and he is not. He makes him a character, but he's not over the top with his caricature. He's not cartoonish. He's almost cartoonish, but not over the edge.
Yeah, not at all. Like, and he brings a real, like you said, like he brings a real warmth to the role, because this is a man who, while has probably fallen out of maybe his purpose and place, actually really does deeply care about that community. I mean, that's even illustrated towards the end of the movie, before the riot starts, where he's trying to calm everybody down.
Listen, good people, please. Let's all go home. Somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah, you boy!
If we don't stop this and stop it now, we're gonna do something we're gonna regret for the rest of our lives. Sal and his boys had nothing to do with what the cops did.
And he's like, listen, we can't do this. We cannot fall to this kind of violence. Because he lived through it. Like the real shit, like the imposed shit, not the created shit, right?
Yes, exactly. And he knows that what the consequences are going to be. He says, if we do this, if we don't stop ourselves right now, we're going to regret this for the rest of our lives. And he's the only person in that crowd that has the perspective and the history to know what that actually means. Because he is at the end of his life, and he probably does have regrets about shit that he did back in the day during those riots. You know what I mean?
He's a great texture piece of the movie, because there are things, like you said, like, it's hard not to like him because it's Ossie Davis, and he brings that warmth and that empathy to that character. But it's also like, when the kids are yelling at him, they're not entirely, while there is like the disconnect between the generations, I kind of read into it a little bit like the failure of their own fathers. Like Ossie Davis, like the mayor is almost kind of like making up for his failures.
Right.
As a man himself, like trying to talk to the kids in the neighborhood, saying, hey man, do the right thing, which I think is the only time that is uttered in the movie, is from Ossie Davis. Yeah, he's a great character. He's a great actor. I mean, one of my favorite Ossie Davis performances is actually the last movie he ever made. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Bubba Hotep. Have you ever seen Bubba Hotep?
Bubba Hotep.
You have seen it?
I never saw it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Bruce Campbell as Elvis in an elderly home who has to defeat a mummy, and Ossie Davis plays this guy in the elder folks' home that thinks that he's JFK in hiding.
That's where they took a piece of my brain. They got it back in D.C. in that goddamn job. I got a little bag of sand up there now.
Jack, no offense, but President Kennedy was a white man.
That's how clever they are. They dyed me this color, all over. Can you think of a better way to hide the truth than that?
He's like, there's so many funny moments. He's like, they dyed my skin black so they wouldn't know. Like, it's a great movie. I'll send you a care package soon. I got an extra copy of that movie.
All right.
Yeah, Ossie Davis is great in that. My favorite performance is, and it's probably because I'm a white honky, I love Danny Aiello and also Giancarlo Esposito. I find Buggin' Out's character, like, I just love, because it's because I know who Esposito is and his real disposition, where he's like whiter than I am.
But rarely do I see any Italian Americans eating in here. All I ever seen is black folks. So since we do spend much money in here, we have some say.
What are you, troublemaker?
The character really did attract me because I had never played a b-boy. He's more of, I think, in a way, a political figure, in a sense.
Yes.
The way he speaks and stuff. And then Danny Aiello is just such a warm presence. Like, you actually want to like hang out with that guy, you know?
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, you really want to go into Sal's and bug him about putting some extra cheese on a slice.
But Sal is like a good man. Like, he's a good person. That's why, and he loves his sons. He's running his business. He has like respect, and like he feels like kind of honored to be part of that community in a weird way. Like, when he's talking to Pino, which is like one of the best scenes in the movie, is that slow move in to Pino and Sal talking in the afternoon.
Yes.
Like he's such a good person. That's why I kind of always, especially now coming back to it as an older person, as an older man, like watching the movie now, I think like having Sal like have this outward expression of racial animosity was a little cheap. I thought it was a little cheap, a little like artificial. If there's a false note in the movie, it's Sal saying the N-word. I think he still would have smashed the boombox, but I don't think that he feels that way about the community. And that's like, you know, Spike Lee and Danny Aiello like completely disagree about the kind of the reality of the character.
Do you know what I'm saying? I don't want you to paint too pretty a picture. I don't want to paint too pretty a picture for the guy and make him look like a flag waver that he's the world's greatest liberal. And I don't know if that's right. I think we thought, and I thought he's not a racist. He's a nice guy. He sees people as people.
Well, I think the style was a racist. I mean, but Danny didn't. I mean, one thing we had to fight against is that Danny really tried hard to make Sal a likable character.
He said those words all through his life. I believe it. Now it's grown to a point where he don't want to accept the word, and the word is distasteful to him. The same such as maybe Dago would be to him, or Guinea, or Spick. Or Spick, yeah.
Like Spike Lee's like, no, he's a racist.
Well,
he's a racist old man. And then
Spike
Danielle is like, how could I be racist?
Look, he's a white man that breathes, and so as far as Spike Lee is concerned, he's a racist. And I truly think that is, it was a prototype of the whole, racism is privilege plus power, which equals that only white people can be racist, and white people are racist everywhere. And I think that Spike Lee kind of has a little bit of that bug. I think a lot of black people have a little bit of that bug.
Well, because Spike Lee's an educated guy. Like he went to Morehouse College. He would have been exposed to that kind of I don't know, is it a philosophy? Is that what you would call it? Is it a philosophical kind of position?
I certainly wouldn't call it a philosophy, Sean. But no, yeah, I mean that way of thinking, where it's like, the white man is the devil, that demon Yaqub shit. I mean, it's really half-baked Nation of Islam shit. It's the same shit that white nationalists say about black people, except it's like literally gut a man. Like Sam Hyde's gut a man.
Yes.
It's just reverse the fucking races, dude. Reverse the races.
No, I totally agree. I actually think John Turturro is fantastic in this movie.
Oh, he's one of his best. One of his best.
I mean, he's a great character actor, period. But in this movie, especially, like there is something there. It was funny, like in the there's like a 20th anniversary retrospective about the movie, and John Turturro like relates this anecdote, this story.
I think I said
Tell us the story.
Well, we will watch dailies, and when you watch dailies, you see it over and over again, the same scene. So sometimes you see me saying those things over and over again, and you would invite everybody in to dailies who had never seen dailies before, and not that I had seen that many of them either. And there was one girl who was in craft service who didn't really kind of, she would look at what I was doing, and she thought, maybe that's exactly how I was. And she would rarely ever give me water when she brought water around. But after she saw us specifically, I don't know what scene it was, she came up to me and she told me that she hated me. She said, I hate you. I hate you so much. And I was like, uh-huh. And I told you, and I was like, you got to get me on the cover of Ebony, man. With your arm around me,
No, seriously. I mean, he's such a vile, racist character. He can't even come up with any. When he's pressed on his racism, he actually can't even come up with any tangible reasons why he is a racist.
And all of his favorite actors are black. Eddie Murphy is his favorite actor. Prince is his favorite musician. Even though he tries to say Bruce Springsteen, which I thought was funny.
Bruce.
Yes.
And then Magic Johnson, his favorite sports star. And he's like, no, they ain't they're not like that. They're different. They're different.
Well, technically, Magic Johnson was only his favorite sports star for about another year and a half after that. But anyway, so, like, I think that you're right. It took a lot of the wind out of Sal's character for him to be the one to finally go over the edge. I guess, if Spike was being more honest in that moment, he could have said, like, Sal was not a racist character, but those years and years and years of slow trickle, dealing with all this bullshit from the black community, all this, the microaggressions towards Sal from the black people. You know what I mean? And constantly having to tell these motherfuckers extra cheese is $2. You know what I mean? And dealing with all this fucking bullshit, and then finally it just bubbles over, and he finally says the word that he's wanted to say for 25 years. But that's not the way that it came out of Spike Lee's mind. In Spike Lee's mind, Sal has always been a racist, and it's revealed in that moment. And I don't
Exactly.
think
I don't think that's true. It doesn't even track with the movie he made.
No.
And the Danny Aiello kind of rationalized it in the sense he's like, yo, when you're, and I think this is something Spike said about the other characters in the movie, was that when you're in these moments of anger, of tension, you're gonna say the meanest thing you can say. You're trying to put somebody off. You're trying to make them mad.
Yep.
It's like when Sal says the N-word in Do the Right Thing, he's saying fuck you. That's the equivalent of it.
Right.
Fuck you. How dare you come in here and disrespect my fucking business? We've already had this conversation, Raheem. You don't gotta be like this.
But that's what sets the entire tinderbox off, because until he says that, everybody in the restaurant is still on his side.
On his side, exactly.
The teenagers, yeah. Martin Lawrence and all those teenagers, Mookie is yelling at him, Radio Raheem, dude, we want to go home. We've been here all day. We just want to get out of here. And up until Sal loses it and finally lashes out with that racist comment, Sal does several things during that scene which makes him lose the crowd, and that's why he ends up losing his shop.
Yeah. Which is, I don't know. I don't know how I actually feel about that, which I suppose is maybe the point of the movie, I suppose. Is to, in some ways, really kind of not really know how you're supposed to feel about every aspect of what happens in those final moments.
Yeah, and it's presented in an extremely realistic way, whereas a middle-class white person and a black person from the hood will come away from this movie thinking two different things about what happened at the end, or feeling two different ways about it. And
that's what Spike Lee says that. He's been very explicit. Every interview I watched, he said the same thing. He was just for some reason black people care, or white people care more about the destruction of property than the loss of life. People are more concerned that Sal lost his shop rather than Radio Raheem dying.
Yeah, he goes back to that well several times, and I think part of that is I don't think that literally every white person in the world that Spike Lee talked to was puzzling at why Mookie threw it. I think he's exaggerating a little bit, but I think that black people and white people are going to walk away from this movie seeing two different things because we have two different perspectives, and.
Yeah, they actually they made that movie about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's first date. Because as the legend goes, this was the first movie. This is the movie they watched on their first date. And there's a scene in that movie where there's a waspy white guy outside, kind of decrying Mookie's actions, talking to a young Barack on the street. I'm sure it totally happened, totally natural. Talking to Barack on the street, and and he's just like, I can't believe he did that. That's clearly not the right thing. And he started a riot, and this was actually a really negative act. And then as soon as the white guy walks away, Barack Obama is just like, man, I know I knew Mookie did that.
I always said that to make Avery feel better. Mookie threw that trash can because he was angry.
And I get that, but it's for black people, that's where it ends. And for black people, if you assault an old white man, and murder him because you punched him too hard and then his head hit the pavement, as long as he said the N-word, it's okay. There seems to be this line in the sand for black people that once white people cross it, fucking all bets are off. And when I want to say to Spike, listen, the reason that white people can't understand why Mookie threw the fucking trash can is because Sal's Famous Pizzeria has nothing to fucking do with why Radio Raheem got killed. Radio Raheem got killed by a police officer that wanted to kill a black dude. So you go down to the police station and you burn the fucking police station down. That's the way white people think. But black people are like, oh, they killed Radio Raheem. We're pissed off. There is a storefront right in front of us. So it is a legitimate expression of rage to burn that down. And that like totally makes sense to them.
Oh, because I mean, part of the framing of Sal's character as the movie goes on is that he frames him almost as a colonizer, as an interloper. He comes into this community and inserts himself where he doesn't belong.
But then we get into the concept of like, well, if white people don't belong in black communities, then why did we even integrate?
No, I agree with you, and but I'm saying like there is this thing where they start trying to kind of destroy the wholesomeness of Sal, and part of it starts with Joy Lee, Spike Lee's real sister, who plays his sister in the movie, Jade.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's like a scene where Sal's very taken with Jade. He obviously really kind of loves her in a way as being a neighborhood kid.
Jade. How you doing, Jade?
Great.
Where you been?
Just working hard, keeping busy. How's business going?
Business is great. You know, we were wondering when you're going to stop by and pay us a visit. What can I fix you?
Regular slice.
No, I'm gonna make you something special, something very special, if you don't mind.
And you can read that scene two different ways. You can read it as just like, hey, she's a neighborhood kid. She's got her shit together. She's very responsible. She's well-spoken. Like, she's gonna go places. Sal just kind of appreciates that and respects that, right? Or you can read it as him being a creeper.
Yeah.
I
read it that way.
Who doesn't read it? Did you read it that way? How did you read it?
I don't know how to read it. I mean,
I think it's intentionally ambiguous.
Yeah, all these years that I've seen the movie, I mean, honestly, Sean, the first time I watched the movie, I thought that they had a relationship. I thought that there was something weird going on.
Okay.
And the more years that I've watched it, the more I think that they don't, and that I think that Sal has an admiration for her that is probably a little too much. He may have even had some thoughts about her that were a little unwholesome, but Sal, I don't think, would ever go to the extent of trying to do something creepy about it, other than making her like a veal parmesan sandwich.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jade, look, even as a viewer, Jade is kind of a radiant character. She's a beautiful girl. She has a wonderful personality. She's one of the most uplifting characters in the story. And when she's on screen, you want to look at her. You know what I mean? It seems like her soul kind of radiates onto screen. She seems like kind of a warm person that you'd want to be around. So it would be obvious that Sal would be taken by her.
Yeah, that he would respond that way. Yeah.
How deep does that go for Sal?
But it's a connection to what he says about how he feels about his food and the neighborhood. Like, he is proud that he's part of this community. Like, he's fed them.
Right.
Like, because the first time I watched it, because like I said, I watched it 3 or 4 times. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is like, that's, like maybe that's just modern context or whatever, the modern way to read into it. Because I was just like, oh, that's a little off-putting. It's a little creepy. It's like a little too much.
Yeah.
But then I really started thinking about it and trying to be honest with myself about it. And as a person that is getting older, as a person in their mid-30s, like when you meet somebody that's like from a bad neighborhood or a bad place, you want to like go that extra mile to be nice. Like that you see potential in, rather. Like you see potential in this person.
Right.
You want to go that extra mile, and you want to be like paternal. Like you want to like be like, hey, you're doing a great job. Everything's great. Let me make something for you. Let me do something for you. Like I've experienced that in my own life, and I'm only 34.
Yeah, like maybe Sal just kind of sees her For straight up, I think that there's a lot that is hinted at off screen that's intentionally not explained. But I think that Sal, like you said, sees her as kind of like a shining light in her own community, a shining light for Mookie. And maybe Sal does have a little bit of a crush on her, but he knows that
He
she's
might.
too young, for him to pursue anything or whatever. But I think that I can't give you a clear answer as to what's going on there because I think that it's a mix of everything. I think Sal has admiration for her, attraction to her. I think that she has probably a bit of admiration for Sal, and maybe she has kind of like an old guy thing too. Hey, I've seen that before. When I was in Santa Fe and I was hanging out at St. John's College, I knew a couple of those younger girls who really liked older, like significantly older dudes.
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure. Yeah.
and so like maybe Jade had a little thing for Sal, but I don't think that it's clear cut in any direction. I think that it's probably a murky mixture of all those things. Like so many things in this movie, he doesn't present you an answer. He presents you a bunch of different possibilities.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. It's actually, and it's interesting. Joey Lee actually has. I listened to the audio commentary that they recorded back in 1997 because this was part of like the Criterion Collection, and they recorded an audio commentary, and she's one of the participants, and she had like the most like adult, like she is that character in real life. Like she had the most adult, pragmatic view on like the themes of the movie. Like she was just like, she was like, oh, why can't you make a movie about something you don't agree with? Like, why can't we like actually just like expose a slice of life, whether or not like we think it's like the right way? Like not every movie needs to be kind of a moral statement. But I think, but I do think the Spike is not completely amoral in his movies.
No.
However much he would like to like present himself as being that, I don't actually think that he really means that.
No, I don't think that. But I don't think that this is a movie that lacks morality because it is absent of any clear morality. I think that this movie sort of puts forth several different layers of morality and challenges you to say, at what point in this thread of morality does it become wrong or right? At what point during these tangle of interactions did somebody make the wrong decision that led to this terrible thing? Who's responsible during what part of the chain? Is it Radio Raheem for walking into that place with his boombox blasting in the first place? Is it Sal for saying the N-word then smashing it with a hat with a baseball bat? Is it then Radio Raheem for attacking Sal and choking him out? Is it the cops for just coming in and being a complete abuse of power assholes? At what point in this chain of events does somebody actually take a slice of responsibility? And I think the true answer of it is that all of them, through their making the wrong decision, through doing the wrong thing, take some kind of slice of responsibility. But at the end of the day, you're going to, like the guy in his Celtics jersey, you're going to choose your ethnic side. Do you feel more sympathy towards Sal for losing his restaurant, towards Radio Raheem for losing his life, towards bugging out for getting his sneakers scuffed? I personally feel very deeply for him. So many. I don't.
Who's responsible? Bugging out's responsible. He starts the chain.
But is it really bugging out that's responsible, or is it the consumerism that's embedded in bugging out from the Nike Corporation because he doesn't want to get his sneakers wet, so he doesn't go into the fire hydrant, so he gets really pissed off? Whose fault is it?
No, I agree with you. I was being a little facetious.
I know, I am too. But with a movie like this, you can really go around in circles because there is he in the best possible move does not present you with any actual clear, evident answers. He just presents you with the situation.
Yeah, and that makes people uncomfortable. I mean, there was even reviews of this movie from when it came out that claimed it was going to start race war riots.
Right.
That it was going to affect the outcome of a mayoral election that was going on. Would have been the first black mayor in New York. that a white guy wrote, of course. I think his name is Bruce Denby. Because Spike talked about it for 30 years.
When this film debuted in Cannes, there was a big brouhaha that Do the Right Thing would incite riots. And I wish the both of you go see the articles written by David Denby and Joe Klein, which were very racist articles.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
Very racist. They still have not apologized for those racist reviews of the film. In other words, they were saying like, black people not smart enough to make the distinction between what's on the screen and what's real life. So black people will come out of theaters burning and looting, but a white audience go see Arnold Schwarzenegger shooting motherfuckers up left and right in the Terminator. But the white audience has intelligence to understand that, but the black audience doesn't have that.
And didn't Denby even said, if audiences go wild, you are responsible.
He said, blood is on my hands.
And this is
also that this film be responsible for David Dinkins not being the first African American mayor of New York City.
He talked about this one review for like 30 years. He still talks about it to this day. I listened to an interview from like 2 years ago. He was still talking about it. Man can hold a grudge. Because like a lot of people responded to the idea like that, maybe even I did the first time I watched it recently, was that it is so subtle and nuanced and and like thoughtful up until the last like 30 minutes, where it feels like things get very messy. But like, you know, having watched it several times after that, I think that is the point. And I even think that at the end of the movie, when he has the two quotes from MLK Jr. and Malcolm X, that's kind of telling you that's the point.
Yeah, actually, after all these years watching it again, when I saw the Martin Luther King quote rolling, I immediately rolled my eyes because I was like, is this motherfucker actually going to give us a fucking third grade Martin Luther King quote that like some elementary school teacher probably has tacked up on her wall? And then he immediately hits you with the Malcolm X quote to just, you know, further illustrate that duality of look, both of these things are wrong. Both of these things are right. Both of these things are a little bit wrong and right at the same time. The human species, the human experience, human interaction, our history, it's way too complicated to just say X was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's what, do you think that there's anything to the idea, like, because when I was watching, because Smiley, you know, like you said, he's the woke white guy trying to insert himself into black politics. Is that how you framed it?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there's a reason that Spike Lee made him retarded.
Well, interesting factoid. That actor had to basically beg Spike Lee for a part, and they wrote him in after the fact. Like, he was not actually part of the original story.
Right.
But like, do you think that because the movie ends with those quotes, and he has the only existing picture of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King together, it's the only existing picture of them together, that there is something to say that like their messages are ignored?
No.
Like, you know, because he's overlooked. He constantly is circling the picture and writing X on the side of it. And like everybody dismisses him and says, "Yeah, man, I'll pay attention to you later. I will buy that picture from you later, or get the fuck out of here. Get out of here."
No, I think that the quotes are displayed in the way that they are, and then Malcolm X and Martin Luther King are shown together shaking hands as a way to express that they are both right and wrong together. You know, they both that they're the yin and the yang, and that there is no correct answer. I think that Smiley is a straight up metaphor. I think that the reason that they ignore him is not because they're ignoring Martin Luther King and Malcolm X's message. It's because they don't want, like, they don't look at white people as being like involved in this, and they look at them as kind of like retarded children, which is like the way that everybody looks at Smiley. And I think that Well, you could say that he's part of getting that message across that the black community is kind of like eschewing its own messages from the past, but it happens over and over again, up until and including when Mookie like straight up just puts his hand in the face of the Nation of Islam ladies, like. But
which is so weird. It's so weird just knowing who Spike Lee is that's there. That's just like
I don't think that it's weird. I think that Spike Lee has a very honest take on the character of Mookie. Mookie is a disingenuous motherfucker. Mookie is the kind of ignorant motherfucker that will use the Nation of Islam as a cudgel in an argument against a white person, but then when the Nation of Islam actually approaches him, he's like, "Get the fuck out of here."
Well, like I mean, that like was it the rainbow or no, the flowers of Islam?
It's the fruit of Islam.
The fruit of Islam. They worked as security for this film, helped clean up the block that they filmed on.
Anybody else upstairs? No one's upstairs, but there's a basement downstairs.
Okay, let's go check that basement out.
Yes,
okay?
sir.
We should go together. Let's check this basement out. Make sure no one is in there. I'd like to give you a little brief history of what took place in Washington when the community invited us to come in Fruit of Islam with permission of Minister Farrakhan, and they asked us to come in and eradicate the community of the drugs. It took us like 200 or 300 people gathered every day in the community just selling drugs. There's a known drug haven, and we went in and the drug pushers disappeared. And as you can see, we're standing here in front of a known crack house, and it was sealed up this morning, and we're here, we're sending a message to the community that we're not going to allow this in the area anymore. Our own is set. And we have one more house located around the corner, and we're going to do the same thing there. And Spike invited us here because he know we have a rapport with the community. We don't come to do no harm to our people. We came in and asked them to leave, and they left.
Actually, basically running out a bunch of crackheads of the building. And of course, they didn't stay there. They didn't help that community. They just left after the production. But like he has like a deep connection to them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of black celebrities do. Michael Jackson had a deep connection to the Nation of Islam at the end.
Did he really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, check that stuff out. Especially check out what Michael Jackson had to say about all the French producers in the music industry at the end. That's some interesting stuff. I don't think it's an accident that he got killed a year and a half after making those comments. But anyway, look, I think that the entire black community kind of treats the Nation of Islam that way, as like this kind of prop. I mean,
yeah, because it's all they have. They feel like it's all they have, right?
Yeah, but it's also like the Nation of Islam is probably one of the best things that the black community has going on for it. But
if it was effective in any way, yeah, but it's not because they're so narcissistic and self-interested.
Yeah,
they're more concerned with being part of a Hollywood production than actually helping that neighborhood.
Certainly.
I mean, that's my.
And it's like every movement of the '60s that is now just a shadow of its former self has been bought and sold and become a commodity, and the Nation of Islam. I mean, there's kind of truth to what Pino is saying. Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, those dudes are fucking charlatans. They don't give a fuck about dude. I give more of a fuck about the black community than those motherfuckers do.
No, those guys are grifters. They just leech onto any public spectacle they can to raise their profile. I mean, I don't understand. Like, 30 years on, like, how the fuck can anybody have respect for Jesse Jackson? Or Al Sharpton especially. Al Sharpton maybe most of all. Maybe the biggest grifter of them all. But
seriously, the dude, sharp toned. I don't know, man. I think it's because it's like when you have somebody out there that's openly speaking for your interests, and there's nobody else.
Yeah,
you can end up following some really dumb or misled people. I mean, it's the same way that, look, people want to know why neo-Nazism or whatever is on the rise in America or in the Western world. It's because the neo-Nazis are some of the only people who actually speak up in a positive way about white people. And when you've gotten into a situation where that's the only people, you're going to find people who follow them out of that notion period.
No,
And
yeah, 100%. If you engage in identity politics on one side, you have to expect it on the other. You have to. I mean, it seems undeniable, like an undeniable reaction.
right. And it's almost like in human events, you cannot pinpoint the spot at which you can break the cycle. You know, the Palestinians and the fucking Israelis have been killing each other for 75 years, and if you want to take a larger history into account, they've been doing it a lot longer. And how can you say to a Palestinian guy, hey, you know what? That Jewish person, their family lived on this land 1,000 years ago. And how can you say to that Jewish person, hey, look, like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, that Palestinian guy, he set off a bomb that killed my family a week ago, so now I have to go do that. There's no fucking way to end any of it. And I think that's why people kind of look at me like I'm a crazy person, but I think that this is baked into the cake of humanity. I don't think that this is going anywhere. And that's not cynical of me.
Well, I think it's because a lot of it has to do with elitism, power structures. Those people are invested in keeping these things going. There's an industry that exists because those things happen. The everyday person will just always constantly suffer at the hands of propaganda.
I agree, but I think that at the end of the day, if no one was making any money off of tribalism, we would still do it.
I think in some respects we would, yeah.
I
don't know if it would be quite what it is now, because I do think most regular people just want to fucking live a happy, productive life at the end of the day.
True. That is true. Most regular people in every stripe across the world just want to get along and do their thing. And then at what point does that person's interest cross-sect with the interest of a person who wants to use them as cannon fodder?
But that's the point. Like, it's just like you will always be used as, like, you will always be weaponized against one another. And I feel like it is because of much broader, more malicious, nefarious causes. It is because of, like, globalism. It is because of, like, the elites that run the world. I know that sounds very vague. I understand that. I don't want to get into the particulars on Do the Right Thing podcast. But, like, I do think people are just kind of pitted against each other constantly, so that there's always an instability. There's always a desperation that exists. Desperation.
Do you think that goes down to the tribal level, and that tribes war with one another in the middle of the jungle or whatever because their chieftains tell them to, or because?
I think it like, once you, like, kind of progress as a society, your standard for survival changes. So if you're still like a tribe in Africa or whatever, and you're fighting against another tribe, that's for survival. It all comes down to, like, what propagates your existence, what propagates, like, you being able to, like, have children, have a life, etc. Like, if you live in a more, like, a quote unquote civilized Western world, like that, it changes a little bit. And I think if people were able to, like, kind of embrace the idea of, like, just kind of base level survival, what does it take to make it? And that was the standard, I think things would be a lot different. It's a frame of mind thing, in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm being naive. I do think there's obviously, like, a lot of biological imperatives. I think there are things that follow us from thousands of years ago in terms of how we respond to people and things. It's like in our genetic code, because it all came down to the concept of staying alive. What does it mean to survive? Like, this concept has changed considerably over the eons, right?
Well, I don't think that the concept has changed. I think that the mechanisms that we use to survive have changed.
Okay, that's a better way to say it, yeah.
I think that the desire for survival is the same now as it was then. We just have all these new confusions and technologies, and
yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, the base level of a person is to just survive. And that means a lot of different things. That means their legacy. It means culturally. Like there's a lot of different things. Like at the end of the day, I think more and more that we're on a cultural level, we're in a fight for what base principles are.
I think you're right, but I think that in that war and in all wars, okay, so in any war, if you were to take two soldiers, one from each opposing side, and get the rest of the armies out of there and put them together in the middle of the battlefield with a bottle of whiskey and tell them to just shoot the shit for a few hours, I think that you would have a lot of success with that. Just pulling a random soldier from each army and putting them out of the context together.
I totally agree. 100%.
I mean, look at the Christmas truce in World War I. But when you take those soldiers and put them in the context of their groups and what their groups are waging for in the world, oftentimes not oftentimes, but sometimes you find that groups are waging for kind of an all or nothing thing, especially like 200 years ago. Like 200 years ago, if another group comes through your village and takes over, they're going to kill all the men, rape all the women, and sell all the survivors into slavery.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to protect what we have achieved. We don't want to go back there. But I think what you're saying is very prescient. Like the idea that who is actually, what interests drive conflicts? It's not the interests of the fucking everyday dude. It's not. Because everybody, like you said, you could take soldiers from every conflict, you get together, have them throw a deck of cards and a bottle of whiskey, and they'd probably have a great time. Because everybody kind of wants on a base level the same thing. What happens though, is a cultural thing, like a cultural value dominance. Like what is the best way forward? That's always the fight.
Not always. I mean, that's a really modern way to look at it. I mean,
okay,
that comes from a understanding that we're always going to have enough resources. It kind of comes from the idea that we all have enough, so now all we have to hash out is our cultural differences. I think a lot of these conflicts come down to basic, they have X, we need X, so we're going to kill them and take it. And I think that we do that in the modern day, just in more clandestine ways.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair point, for sure. But that's what I'm talking about, these higher level interests.
Yeah, I mean, once you start getting groups of people that are larger than 20, you start running into these real, and it's literally that, or maybe not 20, maybe it's 150. Once you start building any sort of larger society, you start dealing with these nuances and problems and issues, and then you have, the issue of what do the people on top really want? What are they waging for? What is their long-term game, and what are they telling us it is to get us to do whatever? Mm-hmm. Is the American racial strife a byproduct of 400 years of two groups of people that literally cannot find a way to get along as groups? Or is it a manufactured ethnic struggle used to keep people in a very specific socioeconomic situation? Or is it a little bit of both? Is humanity ever that cut and dried?
It's probably a little bit of both, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just it's bringing it back to do the right thing. I think that Spike was smart enough to understand that life is more complicated and nuanced than was Sal or Mookie right?
Yeah. Which is always the funniest thing, because it's another thing he brought up in interviews all the time. He's like, people get really attached to the title. Who did the right thing? Well, you're just missing the forest for the trees. Actually, do the right thing is a reference to a Malcolm X quote, because of course it is.
What was the quote?
I'm gonna go debate bro and I'm gonna look it up. I think there are plenty of good people in America that are also plenty of bad people in America, and the bad ones are the ones who seem to have all the power and be in these positions to block things that you need and I need. Because this is a situation, you and I have to preserve the right to do what is necessary and the right thing to bring an end to that situation. And it doesn't mean that I advocate violence, but at the same time, I am not against using violence in self-defense. I don't even call it violence when it's self-defense. I call it intelligence. So that's where it comes from.
That's the quote at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, that brings up so many hydras. Was Sal doing the intelligent thing to get to be violent to try to get those people out of his restaurant? I don't think so.
Well, this is like I had an argument. When I was in college, I had an argument with my religion professor, who was a Catholic priest, and we were talking about Islam, and we were talking about there's a kind of a similar sentiment in Islam about the idea that like you do whatever is necessary to fight against like things that are blasphemers. That's kind of the sentiment.
Yeah.
Like you can do whatever you need to do to fight against blasphemers. And they were trying to say that's like a very specific thing. And I was like, no, that's pretty broad. Like anybody could take that in a relative sense and being like, well, you're a blasphemer, so I guess it's okay that I kill you. And like that's kind of the problem with a lot of Islam in general. And he was just not having it. I was like, why? How can you not read that way? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, what are you talking about? But, which is the same thing with that Malcolm X quote. It's just like this idea that, like, okay, well, self-defense is not violence. Well, what constitutes, like, righteous self-defense? Like, what do you actually mean? Like, it's too vague. It's too vague.
I think that Malcolm X was probably trying to do a rope-a-dope right there. I mean, at the end of the day, he was trying to probably come off as being, he was trying to not Fed posts. I think is what Malcolm X was doing right there. Because at the end of the day, Huey Newton, Malcolm X, the Fruit of Islam, these motherfuckers were ready and willing to use violence and force to get what they needed to get done. He just couldn't come out and fucking say that shit on paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but and then the official Nation of Islam was just making too much goddamn money, so they decided not to. They're a very profitable enterprise.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great movie that endures because it asks the questions and it lets the viewer kind of project their own reality onto it. And even though you know that Spike has a particular idea of what he's trying to get across, he's not hammering that home. He's bringing forth all the characters and all of their perspectives into this one tapestry and just snapping it in your face and letting you decide.
Yeah, and I think that is why, like you said, that's why it endures, because it is for lack of a better way to put it, it's a conversation piece, and it will inspire people to like talk about the concepts of the film rather than trying to figure out the film, which I think this conversation kind of vets out to be true. Because you start talking about these things and it just becomes about everything. It's not just about like the specific idiosyncratic nature of this story. It's about everything about culture and about how people interact with each other. And he very successfully like kind of created a perfect allegory for human interaction, and about like and about how different races feel about each other, and et cetera, specifically from his experiences living in New York City. But like also, I think you could take a much broader view on it.
Right, and I mean, at the end of the day, I think that the movie does kind of have a thesis of. I don't think that this is portraying us as being able to get along. I think that this is portraying us as groups of people who have a really tough time getting along. And the events that happen at the end with the police, I think that's kind of another separate message about the way that police treat the black community. But I think that ultimately, I mean, even down to when Vito and Mookie are talking about who their favorite pitchers are, Dwight Gooden versus Roger Clemens. First of all, nobody's going to pick Dwight Gooden unless they're black, okay? That's just not, that's like saying that Warren Moon is your favorite quarterback. Nobody's fucking going there unless it's a racial pride thing. At the, one of the last shots of the movie is Who are the boxers? It was Rocky Marciano and Ezzard Charles. That's the picture that it flashes to when the place is burning down, and it shows Rocky Marciano knocking out the black dude. You know, people. I mean, that event happened probably 25 or 30 years before the movie takes place, but Sal still takes such an ethnic solidarity in when Rocky Marciano knocked that black guy out. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think that it's so baked into our human nature that until Elon Musk comes up with like a Neuralink upgrade, you can get your firmware upgraded so that you're no longer a racist. I don't think that it's going anywhere in any of our psyches. The same reason that when, you know, a white girl crosses the street when she sees a black guy, the same reason that when I was on the T in Boston and I saw an African dude cussing out an old Chinese man because he ruined his country, quote unquote. Ethnic strife, racial strife, it's going to happen wherever two groups of people bump up against one another. It's happened for the last 15,000 years of human existence. One could say it's the reason that humanity evolved into the creatures we are today, because we as a species once bumped up against the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals. You know what I'm saying? And created a new species of man when we interbred with them. And you know, 25,000 years ago, there was a Homo sapien that had a woolly mammoth meat shop, and then a Neanderthal came along and threw a rock through the front window of that and started a riot. You know what I'm saying? Like, these fucking situations have been with us as long as we've been an animal that is surviving on this planet. And I think that this movie smartly does not answer any of the questions. It just lets them roll.
Yeah, and I would agree that, yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I think that that's why the film endures. That's why it endures, because it inspires conversation rather than like giving you something to kind of very specifically either agree with or disagree with. It's not like giving you that easy out.
No, and it does it with, I think one of the other reasons it endures, and I'm running to the end of my notes now, and I know we're getting very long, but the sense of humor that it has, it doesn't take itself so grimly seriously as, you know, like one of the reasons why I always love Menace to Society as compared to Boys in the Hood is that Boys in the Hood was like some fucking soap opera.
Fuck you looking at, nigga? I'm still trying to find out, nigga. Hold on.
That took itself so seriously, and Menace to Society had all this weird, dark humor in it.
Man, you got some money or not?
Oh, man, come on, man. What took me up this time?
Nigga, you crazy. Hook you up. Get the fuck out of here, man.
Check this out, man. I got these burgers, man. They some double cheeseburgers.
Nigga, I just ate.
Man,
I just ate, fool. I don't want no motherfucking cheeseburger. If you ain't got no money, you just asked out.
Call this motherfucker.
Yo, dog, hurry up!
Fuck.
Come on, man. Wait, man. Man, I'll suck your dick. Come on, man. Just hook me up.
What the fuck you just say, nigga?
Man, I said I'll suck your dick. Come on, man. Just get me.
Fuck.
Damn.
Suck on that, you bitch-ass trick.
Yo, dog, what the fuck you doing?
Yo, dog, hurry up!
Any of y'all want a hamburger?
Like almost this like American Psycho-esque, like, you know, like dark humor.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why Do the Right Thing endures, because it's not even dark humor. It's just straight up kind of like lighthearted, good-natured. Like there's some belly laughs in this fucking movie. You know?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And I watched it several times in the last week, and there were lines that made me laugh like every single time. When Sweet Dick Willie's talking about, fuck Mike Tyson, man, I whoop Mike Tyson's ass.
Fuck Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson ain't shit. I remember when he mugged that woman right there on Lexington. Remember that shit? And you were gonna tell him that? I'll tell him that. I ain't fuck Mike Tyson. That's to his face. That's to you goddamn Mike right. Tyson, knock I ain't scared of no goddamn Mike Tyson. Shit, you'll talk that shit I'll now. drop him like a bad habit. You Shit, hear that? sure. Go ahead. Yeah, boy. Yes. If Mike Tyson dream about whooping my ass, he better wake up and apologize.
Like that shit makes me laugh every time I fucking see this movie, and I think that because these very heavy concepts are shown to you through the filter of humor, that it makes it easier to digest, and all these characters are so fun to be with. Like I don't even want to stop talking about this movie. Like I want this podcast to go on for like over 2 hours.
But that's what makes it so tangible, because that's how real human beings interact with their environment, especially when it's oppressive or there's any type of depression or anything like that. Like that's how people respond to it. That they are themselves. They're funny. They're self-deprecating. Like it doesn't comport to like a melodrama in most people's lives, right?
Right. I remember several times in my life being like totally like frustrated with people because I wanted to be angry about something and I wanted to be like huffy and puffy about something.
You were bugging out. You were trying to bug out, yeah.
Yeah, and you'd go into work and there'd be like a dude at work that just like laughs a big belly laugh and slaps you on the shoulder and tells you some stupid, pee pee poo poo joke.
Yeah, and your day is fine, and the rest of the day you're like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, and that thread of humor keeps weaving through this movie, and anytime shit gets too heavy, it brings you right back in, and you're laughing again, and it's just so well done.
Because it confronts the absurdity of some of what the people are doing. I think Bugging Out is probably the most emblematic of that. Like that's a very funny character. I mean, it ends up in a serious consequence by the end of the movie, but like that's a very like almost like a stereotypical, almost like kabuki theater. Like now, like when you know that Giancarlo Esposito is like the whitest guy you know, and you see him giving that performance.
Yo! Yo!
Like that is like close to blackface.
It seriously is. I mean,
like it really is.
Like or like Martin Lawrence's character.
Damn, man, you might as well throw them shits out. Them shits is blow.
Holy shit! His first movie, actually.
Yeah, who like like I'm not sure. Like if it wasn't Martin Lawrence and I knew he wasn't hamming it up, I would think that character might be like mentally retarded a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know that it's just Martin Lawrence being like a total ham.
Yeah.
And like you knew guys growing up who were just so silly and like this weird silly antagonism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you ever know a guy that was like Martin Lawrence in that movie who just never took anything seriously but was always like really aggravating?
Yeah, I think I might have been that guy a few times. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, you're probably right. I've probably been him too. But it's just like, I don't know. Even those tiny little characters, like that group of teenagers, it's always the four. It's Martin Lawrence, the girl, the dude who's reading the Black Panther comic, and then the other guy.
Yeah.
The like nondescript, very square-jawed black guy.
Which I actually, the girl, actually, I really loved the girl. I really loved her presence in that group because it felt, it really reminded me of being a teenager. Like in our, like even like going back to when we were hanging out, like our social group, it was like 50 dudes and like one girl.
Right.
It was like all of us and Kate Milliken. Like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And she definitely brought that vibe of like the girl who's hanging out with the dudes, and she's always kind of like when they're making fun of the mayor, she's telling them to knock it off, and you know what I mean. She's always trying to be the voice of reason in the rowdy group of dudes, and I always liked her character too. I always thought straight up, I always thought she was kind of cute, and then also I loved her fashion. Like after she gets sprayed in the fire hydrant, and then she changes into like her neon pink and black ensemble with the hat.
Yeah.
It's just she's so hip. She's got such nice fashion.
Yeah, it's very Lilith fair.
It's funny, man. Like the fashion in this movie makes me smile because it was so bad back in the late 80s, early 90s, but it has a very specific look and feel to it all. Like you look at the fashion and you know what time period you're in.
Yeah, it is very specific to like late 80s, early 90s. It does.
Lots of spandex, lots of sports apparel.
Oh, even Mookie. I mean, when you start looking at Mookie's outfit, he's got the Sal's like jersey on, but he's also got like these like spandex underwear that go beyond his green shorts.
Yes.
His green short like basketball shorts.
Yeah, and Bugging Out is wearing his Jordans with like Everlast. What are they? What the fuck are they even? He's got like Everlast. They look like the weights that you'd use for like weight training or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I noticed that too, and I was like, oh, are those like ankle weights that he has on?
I mean, maybe they are, dude. Because you know what? That would be perfect for Bugging Out's character because that motherfucker walks around with extra baggage on him 24 hours a day.
Which I completely believe because Giancarlo Esposito got to create the look of that character.
Yes.
He showed up like that. And like I was watching an interview about him specifically, and they're like, yeah, it was when he found the glasses. He has a thing for glasses as an actor. And then I thought about like all the roles that guy had played. I was like, he does have a thing for glasses.
Yes.
And he's like, once he finds the glasses, he finds the character. And I was like, those glasses are so specific and so perfect for Bugging Out.
I know, and like everybody is wearing some kind of pendant or some kind of chain, but he's wearing multiple ones.
Yeah,
he's got the Africa one and the Black Power one. He's got the colors on, and he's got his Jordans on, and he's got it's like everything about him is so extra. He's got the gold tooth. He's got everything. And then one of my favorite moments with him is when Jade is escorting Mookie back to Sal's, and Bugging Out is trying to get them on board with the boy cat.
Yeah.
And Mookie says to him, hey, man, I got to get back to work. And then there's like an ADR of Bugging Out going, yeah, man, stay black. Like he's constantly telling Mookie in the movie to stay black. And in the one voiceover, it sounds like he's telling Mookie to stay black as like almost an afterthought, as often be like, yeah, have a good day, man. Yeah, stay black. It's like, all this rhetoric like doesn't even matter to Bugging Out. Like all that matters to him is his fucking sneakers, and he just happened to be pretty pissed off that day. And like Jade said, about something that's fucking completely inconsequential.
Yeah. Shit. I mean, fucking Sal basically has the perfect answer, which is the parody that we opened this podcast with.
You want brothers on the wall? Get your own place. You can do what you want to do. You can put your brothers and uncles and nieces and nephews, your stepfather, stepmother, whoever you want, you see? But this is my pizzeria.
Sal has the perfect answer. He's like, open your own fucking business. You can do what you want.
Yeah. You put your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your aunts, your nieces, your nephews, you put them all up on a wall.
But I really love this movie. I really do. I think it's a complicated movie. I think a lot of people would benefit from watching it, and come to your own conclusions about it. But it's not just like a good movie in terms of like the messaging or whatever. It is a murderer's row of fantastic character actors. Also, some of the best director for the cinematography of the era. I mean, Ernest Dickinson, like we said kind of early on, like really, like so much of the credit of why this movie works is that dude. Like it creates a tone, it creates an atmosphere. There's something tangible. The verisimilitude of it. Like he really did something special here, and he did it like in a real environment too, which is even more impressive. Because apparently, like when they first started filming, the first couple weeks it was like overcast and raining. I was listening to the audio commentary, and he was like, man, I had to figure out how to create like what looked like realistic sunlight. Because they were filming stuff and it was raining out.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I had to figure it out. And that's why the movie has that kind of that oppressive, like orange hue to it the whole time.
Yeah. And it's almost like a stage play in that it takes, in fact, I have a fantasy of in my retired years doing like community theater, and if I could scrape together enough black people in the state of Vermont, I would love to direct a stage play of Do the Right Thing, because it all takes place on the same corner. It never leaves that corner. It goes to a couple different apartments in the hood, but it all takes place right on that corner.
Yeah.
And right, it's like almost claustrophobic, like you can't get away from it. And in the hood, dude, there are people. Like I know people from Keene who like grew up in Keene and they still live in Keene and they never really moved anywhere else, that's one thing. There are people in the hood who haven't been outside of the 4 blocks around where their apartment was.
Mm-hmm.
They've never fucking left that area of the world. And the fact that this movie sticks on that one corner is it's a peek into the world of people who like aren't going anywhere.
Yeah,
Like, this
townies. They're
yeah,
townies. Yeah.
townie. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is where it's going to be for you forever. And the sort of trad side of me says, like, look, kid, there's nothing outside your village. Marry the girl that your parents like hook you up with, have 18 kids, and just fucking, you know what I mean? And then there's a part of me that's like, yeah, there's a big world out there that you need to go see. Well, what's the right thing to do? You see how I brought it all around at the end, Sean?
I would always err on this side of see what's out there. Just go for it. Like, you got it, like you know, with the prerequisite that you and I are their fathers.
Right.
Like I just I can not imagine my life without having the experience I had, and I just like you, like I got around in my early to mid 20s, and then I stopped when I settled down. I figured it out. I was just like, okay, I found the place I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that is realizing the cyclical nature of things and wrapping it up. You know, one of the most powerful things in the movie is kind of a throwaway line at the end where Sal and Mookie have had their big explosion, their big argument, and they're kind of trying to have a little small talk and shoot the shit. And Sal says something like,
"Are you sick?" "I'm high as a motherfucker. I'm all right, though."
Well, they say it's even going to get hotter today. What are you going to do with yourself?
Make that money, get paid.
and that in that line where Sal says it's going to be even hotter today. Hey, look at where we are in 2021. Where there's a Radio Raheem every 6 weeks, like I've been saying this entire fucking episode. It is only going to get worse. It's only going to get hotter. And you know, people think I'm crazy by, you know, look, man, if the ethnic situation in this country gets worse, like we're going to be in some unprecedented fucking waters in America. We're going to be in some really sticky times. We're at a precipice right now where, dude, race relations in this country haven't been this bad since like the Klan.
I agree with you. Yeah, but I think like I said, like I've kind of been saying, I think so much of that is manufactured, and I'm not saying that it doesn't have a tangible real world effect, but I think like waking people up to like what is actually going on, and what actually controls your life, and what actually drives you, and why you think the things you do, and why you believe the things that you do is important.
Yeah.
And I know, but the unfortunate reality is a lot of people are not going to either be smart enough or forward-thinking enough, like the characters in this film, to look past their nose. But we are encouraged not to. We're encouraged to just only exist in the immediate. And like you know, and we've talked about this before on several podcasts. Like becoming a father was like the biggest red pill ever. It's the biggest long-term view of my life and my existence and what really matters ever. And I think if people took that kind of shit more seriously, we would be in a much better place. But you're always encouraged not to. Even whether you're white, black, whatever, like black people especially, but like white people as well, you're encouraged not to take seriously like your responsibilities, the things that you bring into the world, the things that you create. Marriage is a fucking throwaway thing. Like, oh shit, marriage is hard? No, fuck everybody. No shit. Like two people trying to fucking live together that are different and trying to raise a family and trying to work things. Oh, is it hard? No shit, everybody. Like, come on, wake the fuck up. Like everything's gonna be some sort of perfect fucking garden all the time. No, it's not. You have to have the fortitude. As much as like I don't want to sometimes. Like,
Dude, sometimes
it's so much easier just to like I want to give up. Like my kid earlier today, screaming in my face over whether or not he should eat like chicken nuggets, right? Like I'm just trying to. I'm like, all I want to say to him is like, I just want you to live to tomorrow. I just don't want you to die. Like, please listen to me. And he's like, no. Like, that is the work of life. Like that, at the end of the day, that is a metaphor for so many things that are going to happen in your life, and you have to stick to your principles, and you have to have integrity.
You have to, because you know what? If you don't have principles and integrity, you end up like mother sister at the end of this movie, where in 1 second she's going, burn it down, burn it down, burn it down, and then literally 3 minutes later she's going, no, no, no.
Yeah, because that's Spike Lee being cheap and being like, hey, this is the same thing as civil rights. Look, there's fire hoses. Black people are being hit with fire hoses. Oh, are they attacking the firemen? Yes, but they're being hit with fire hoses. Doesn't that remind you of Selma?
Yeah, the shit like that is a little cheap to me, and
yeah, it's wildly cheap, like because it undermines his own movie.
Yeah, like like these black teenagers in Bed-Stuy burning down this pizza shop is the same exact thing as Selma, and it's like, but it's that disconnect between the younger generation and the mayor's generation, where the mayor's generation, look, man, you can end up getting lynched. You get too far out of line. And then this new generation is like, look, man, I don't feel like working at McDonald's. I want to get paid.
Yeah. Which is, that's how we all feel, I suppose. But that's the part of the theme of the movie is like it's personal responsibility, it's effort. Like you see an opportunity, hey, maybe you should go do it instead of waiting till somebody else does it. Like that's like the Greek chorus, Frankie Faison, ML, Robin Hardy. Like that's what they're talking about through the whole movie.
Yeah, and it's just. I'm so glad that we ended up doing this episode because, clearly 3 hours in or more, I forget. We kind of fucked up at the beginning, so I don't even know how long we're going on here for.
Dude, we've done it again, Dan. It's not going to be the 4-hour Jihu, but this is what happens because we haven't talked in a few weeks. So now we're going to go and talk for 3 hours. I'm going to have a nightmare editing session. But I love you, buddy.
Don't kill yourself. Don't kill yourself. But no, I think we can wrap it up now. I think we've kind of said all the things. I'm just glad we didn't have a conversation here tonight about whether or not Mookie did the right thing.
No, because that's the cracker shit. Like, like that's I read so many things. I watched so many things. So like, did Mookie do the right thing?
Oh God, it's so fucking it's so tiresome, dude.
It's like, it's insipid and pedantic, and you're like, did you watch the movie?
White people, this is why black people think you're lame. Okay, you just don't fucking get it.
Yeah, you think it's because you can't dance, but really it's because of shit like this.
But anyway, I mean that is kind of the end of my notes on Do the Right Thing. One of the last notes that I have is it's just the quote actually when the mayor wakes up in Mother Sister's office and he says, "I hope the block is still standing," and she says, "We're still standing," and that's really what matters. Is at the end of the day, we're still here, we're still alive, we're still on Earth, and we still have to make a better tomorrow for our fucking kids somehow.
We can affect change. Like we can actually be a good influence. Which is so many people just abdicate their responsibility with community, with children, whatever it is. They're just like, oh, hang, that's just how kids are. That's what they do. That's what they do. They're like, oh, like you have no voice in that. Oh, great. Awesome. I'm glad my kid gets to fucking grow up around your kids. Great. That's a sidebar.
My kid doesn't get to grow up around any kids. My kid gets to grow up around goats. But anyway.
Yeah, hey, my kid got to grow up around adults. So that's all he's ever known. And okay. That doesn't matter to do the right thing. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, this long-winded. I think we really, honestly, like, I'm really pleased with this conversation. I think we really not only excavated the movie, but the concepts, the themes, like kind of what it's trying to do. Like, kind of in a weird way, we respected the movie by having a much broader conversation.
No, I agree with you. I mean, so much of the shit about this movie online is like a dissecting of, like you said, like the title of the movie, which character did the right thing, blah 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 blah. You know, people don't. It's like people almost don't enjoy the movie. They just want to watch it to answer these fucking questions.
Yeah,
And
because people look at it like it's a historical, like, civil rights piece rather than a movie.
yeah, and you know what? You know why I like to watch Do the Right Thing? So I can fucking listen to the Love Daddy, and I can hang out with Radio Raheem and Mookie and Sal and Jade and Bugging Out and the Koreans and all these fucking characters that are like, you know, I hate to be like one of those white people who watches The Office and says, hey, I feel like they're all my friends. But I feel like, I mean, these characters are so warm and so relatable that they can feel like your friends. And that's why one of the reasons that this movie, after watching it so many times this week, solidified its spot in my top 5 of all time. I love Do the Right Thing. It's one of my favorite movies of all time since, you know, when I was a kid and I didn't understand it when it was on TV, to when I saw it in high school in a film class, when I would quote it with my friends as an adult in the butcher shop and we would all bring it up. It's a great movie. It's for the ages, and it's even more relevant in 2021 than it was in 1989 because like I said, Radio Raheem every 6 weeks in America, dude. Every fucking 6 weeks. The answer to why still isn't answered.
I totally agree, 100%. Yeah, go watch Do the Right Thing. If you've made it this far, if you've made it like over 3 hours into this podcast, go watch Do the Right Thing. Check it out for yourself. I think you're going to be very surprised. I think it's much more thoughtful, warm, inviting. There are characters that every character is somebody you know, and I think that engenders good feelings about it. But anyways, if you'd like to know more about Zoobox and everything going on with Zoobox, a bunch of links in the description. And you guys have a great day. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you, Sean. Have a good night. And hey, remember, always do the right thing. And extra cheese is $2.
$2. $2. More than a slice. Very New York joke. Good night, everybody.